Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. And you know, the number of times that I made a joke about Cam Akers coming back, it had to happen, right? Cam Akers was destined to be a Minnesota Viking again. Somebody, you guys who have followed the Vikings your entire life, is there any third stint that you guys could think of? Is there like a kicker who came back or whatever? Third stints I've had trouble with. There's been plenty of second stints, but trying to find a third stint player, you know, Gus Farrak came back, Brad Johnson came back. We're sitting here looking at Adam Thielen, Marcus Sirles came back once upon a time, but 3 times for Cam Akers now, who rejoins the Minnesota Vikings after the Vikings put Aaron Jones on IR. So a little bit of a tough last couple of days. We're going to break that all down here on another Purple Insider episode presented by FanDuel. Let me get you the FanDuel question of the day right off the bat. With all of these injuries that have happened and with JJ McCarthy down, FanDuel now has the Vikings plus 184 to make the playoffs. And to put that in context, 9 teams are higher on FanDuel in the NFC to make the playoffs than the Vikings. Is that an overreaction? Do you think that FanDuel, they're overreacting, Vegas line's overreacting to the Vikings quarterback situation to bump them down to now be favored to not make the playoffs? Let me know what you think. Also, we'll get your questions, comments, reactions. The last couple of shows, there was just so much that we were throwing at each other in the round table last night and trying to break down every scenario that we finally had a chance to take a deep breath. And let's break down the news today, the conversation we had with Wes Phillips that had one thing that really stood out to me, your questions and comments. And then at about 7:30 tonight, Jeremiah Sirles joins. Maggie Robinson will try to lighten things up a little bit toward the end of the show as well. So here's the breakdown on Aaron Jones. It's a hamstring injury. Him going on IR means that it is a serious hamstring injury for him. And the first takeaway is that even though if you want to be that person and you want to say, told you so, they have an old team, they were bound to get injured, I get that reaction. I definitely get that reaction. And throughout the offseason, the reason that I didn't want to talk about the possibility that all these older players, veteran players could get injured was because you never really know. I mean, last year with Aaron Jones, the man runs the ball 255 times. He's over 1,000 yards. He has 51 catches. He looks great. And why would I think that that would change? But a lot of these things are random. But then there's another side of it too, where you could say, look, when you see that contract and it's really a 2-year contract and you look at the history of running backs in the NFL and Aaron Jones hates this, I hate it as an enjoyer of historic running backs who played till they were over 30 years old. You know, the Adrian Petersons, the Tiki Barbers. There's lots of guys who did it and still had success. It's the most annoying thing when you listen to a fantasy podcast and the hosts are like, stay away from that running back. He just turned 29. He's ancient. He's on the brink of death. Put him in a nursing home. That's so annoying. It's so annoying. And we did that whole thing last year with Aaron Jones, and well, he's got this injury history in the past, and they think that they can create a plan for him and all that sort of stuff. And what they were banking on, though, unfortunately, was Aaron Jones being an outlier. Now, they go and get Jordan Mason because they wanted to at least mitigate that effect. And there's another part, too, that Aaron Jones in the locker room is a very important piece to this team. That his positive energy, his experience, all of that stuff is important. You can't write off, even as a running back. He had a couple good runs the other night, but being able to catch the ball out of the backfield and how much they projected that to mean to a young quarterback. So also look at the other options outside of Aaron Jones. The best running back option in free agency, well, they got him in a trade, an RFA, Jordan Mason, by far the best running back option to get in free agency / trade this offseason. The next best was Najee Harris, who then did something to his eye on July 4th, playing around with bottle rockets or something, and was never a very good running back to begin with for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you looked at the free agent options and you go, well, we know Aaron Jones. He means a lot. He's great at catching the ball, great at pass protection, averaged 4.5 yards a carry last year. When Darisaw was in there, he was averaging over 5 yards a carry. Bring him back. And they rolled the dice and they lost. And now he's on IR and you're going to miss a significant portion of the season. And, Paul mentions Ty Johnson. There were a couple other running backs that you could make a case for. I think, let's see, there was Javonte Williams who ended up with the Dallas Cowboys. Some other good running back ended up with, now I'm forgetting, Rico Dowdle ended up with Carolina. So, there was a couple of other options that they could have gone with. None of them looked as good as what Aaron Jones brought to the table. But when you look at the percentages, it was a coin flip. Is he going to get hurt because he is on the older side and he is coming off of a 255 carry season? This one to some extent was foreseeable. And yet I also understand why they wanted him back so badly. If you're around Aaron Jones, you understand how special he is as a person in the locker room. And I know you could say, well, is that worth $10 million? But no, he's also special at catching the football. There are very few players who can line up at wide receiver, and they did this a couple of times over the last few games, but you could put on the field at receiver with Mason out there. There's very few receivers who could go, or running backs who could go down the field. He can make plays in space and was still an effective running back with the ball in his hands. And it seemed like the burst wasn't quite where it was last year in these first couple of games, but then the hamstring injury hits. So again, you take that risk and you lost. And they also took the risk with Ryan Kelly, where they knew his injury history. And you look at the way Ryan Kelly played in these first two games, in the snaps that he was in, and he's fantastic. Just fantastic. You haven't seen center play like that in a really long time in Minnesota. Jeff Christie, Matt Burke, it's been a long time since they had center play like that. Joe Berger was pretty good, but this was top notch. And he's leading your young quarterback, and it's a big deal. To have somebody like that leading your young quarterback, but they knew the risk when they signed him that he could get hurt again, and he did. Now with a concussion, and he hasn't been placed on IR, so we'll see what they think of his possibility of coming back soon. And then there's other injuries to guys on this team that did not have they've had some history, like Andrew Van Ginkel, some history, Blake Cashman, some history, but not totally unusual. This Jones one, though, it comes up and it bites them with the realities of running backs in the NFL over the last 20 years is when they get toward this age. Oftentimes they end up on the shelf, like Aaron Jones here. If he comes back in a few weeks, maybe you get him back to full strength and they've got the duo. But the only silver lining is that Jordan Mason was the better running back. Jordan Mason, I think, was the guy that everybody on the internet in the press box, if they're watching in space, that they were yelling to play Jordan Mason more. Everybody, I think, who watched the game the other night wanted more Jordan Mason. And I know that, Wes Phillips was a little bit antsy around that question today, but I'm sure there were some people in the coaching box who were saying it's 1st and 2, Jordan Mason time. So the fact that they replace Aaron Jones and his snaps with a running back who is very effective and very talented means that the drop-off doesn't necessarily have to be significant with Jordan Mason. This is the depth that they haven't had at this position or lots of other positions in years past. They can run the ball against the Cincinnati Bengals. They can run the ball against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who haven't had the defense that everybody expected them to have. They can run the ball against Cleveland probably over the next couple of games. And then, they've got a chance to continue to move the offense. So the fact that they were able to go out and get Jordan Mason and didn't just rely on Aaron Jones really bails them out in this situation. And what else bails them out is that Cam Akers just doesn't mind the state of Minnesota. But is it too hot for him in the summer? It's a little sweltering. It is pretty uncomfortable when it gets to 95 degrees with 100% humidity. Maybe Cam was like, you know what? I'll wait and I'll end up back with you guys in the fall. I'm kidding, but not really, because Cam Akers is here again. And the thing about Cam Akers, for whatever reason, it's just worked pretty well with the Minnesota Vikings. Last year, he ran 109 times for 483 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns, and gained almost 3 yards after contact. He can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield if you ask him to. Cam Akers is a guy that hasn't really seemed to fit with other teams, but for whatever reason has fit with this team. So if you need over the next 4 weeks or however long Aaron Jones is out, Cam Akers to step in and help a little bit, then you've got that. But what you lose is the passing game for Aaron Jones. That is what is really, really going to hurt. Is it was clear that they wanted to get Jones out into space, get him at wide receiver sometimes, which I've kind of made fun of in years past because coaches always say, yeah, we want our guy at wide receiver who plays running back, but then we wouldn't ever really see it. Jones is the rarity that can actually do that. Cam Akers cannot do that. Jordan Mason cannot do that. Now, I am actually a little bit intrigued to see if Xavier Scott gets on the field. Xavier Scott was one of those guys who was a preseason darling, but I don't think it was a total fluke. I mean, he made the 53. Xavier Scott has a background as a wide receiver and runs hard and is a pretty big guy. And we kind of know this about running backs, that sometimes they just randomly pop up based on what you have around them, the scheme, the situation, the passing game. And maybe we see a little bit of Xavier Scott because Cam Akers, even though he probably kept his team issued iPad, I think he's going to have to learn once again on the fly the offense. And the last year that they brought him in, yes, last year, they didn't throw him right in. I think it took maybe 2 weeks before he got in. Now this time around, he's going to have to be active right away, but Xavier Scott might be RB2 coming into the game with the guy that actually has some experience. So I'm a little bit intrigued to see how much they use Mason. I would not be too concerned, though, with Jordan Mason as a total workhorse for this team that plays 85% of the snaps, carries the ball 25 times. I mean, this guy's young. He hasn't had a ton of workload in his past. Just lean on him. Lean on Jordan Mason as RB1. Go a little bit old school if you have to with Jordan Mason this week against the Cincinnati Bengals. There's really no other option. Just to talk about the bigger picture of this, how many injuries have happened, I still will maintain that it is an unpredictable thing, even if you have some guys with injury histories, because you can also look at veteran players like Harrison Smith. I know has missed the first couple games of the season with a health issue, but Harrison Smith has stayed healthy throughout his career as he's gone into his elder 30s. And there's plenty of players that you can look at that know how to manage their bodies better than young players, and they get hurt less and they have fewer soft tissue injuries and things like that. But I think that they knew the risk that they were taking with this roster. And I think they also saw it as kind of a hack, kind of a way to get really good players a little bit cheaper because Javon Hargrave is coming off of an injury. So you don't have to pay as much. Aaron Jones, the season he had was based on what running backs are making these days. The season he had was probably worth more, but there's an injury history there and there's the age curve issue there. So you get him and then you pray. And apparently the Vikings' prayers were not answered by the football gods here, the injury gods, because this is how it's gone at the beginning of the season. The silver lining for them is that they do have depth in a lot of positions. Eric Wilson is able to step in. Dallas Turner, who we can talk about the last 2 days, we didn't get a lot of time to really discuss Dallas Turner's performance, but I've been going back and intermittently in between acquisitions and injuries and everything else, looking at different plays from the game. And so we could talk about that as well. But sometimes, you guys know this, sometimes you just get hit with the injury bug and there's not a whole lot you can do. They had an older team in 2022. They stayed healthy. They had an older team last year. They stayed healthy. And then this year, they have not been able to. And maybe if they get Darisaw back, they really could have used Jordan Addison these last couple weeks. If they get Cashman off of IR as soon as he can come back, then you have a linebacking group with pretty good depth. If you get Van Ginkel back this week, then you feel good about that position. And the bigger point here is, even though they have been hit over the head with injuries, and the worst one is Ryan Kelly, because a concussion leaves his future unclear, and Michael Juergens is playing in his first ever start. That's a tough ask. And all of you who said to me, I'm worried about the backup center, you ended up being right, and I didn't disagree with you. I just wondered who was going to be a better backup center that they were going to find than a guy that they drafted and developed. So Juergens now has a lot on his plate. They badly need Christian Darisaw back, but will he actually be ready to come back in this game? It feels like they need you yesterday, Christian Darisaw out there at left tackle, but you understand why they're taking it slow, because this is a long-term player who's going to be on your team for the next 5-7 years. That's the expectation. So you don't want to mess that up early in one season. And I'm sure that he personally does not want to mess that up either, as somebody who wants to have a really long career, but they need him back. The only silver lining, though, is that, okay, the offensive linemen are always hard to replace. And there is a part of me that wonders about Blake Brandel, and maybe should he have gone back to tackle? That might be hard to ask. Justin School, he's also out. So now you're talking about potentially Walter Rouse, another guy that they've developed. I think he's had a couple of good training camps, maybe a little slow this year, and then took off and was pretty good in training camp. But again, somebody who's never really played before. There aren't too many teams that have good offensive line depth. Show me the great backup left tackles. Show me the great backup centers. But in positions where there is depth, at least the Vikings have it to be able to survive these next few games. They have running backs. They have linebackers. They have an outside linebacker. And there shouldn't be any excuse, even with some of the injuries, for not beating the Cincinnati Bengals with Jake Browning, for not going overseas and taking at least 1 out of 2, but probably really need 2 out of 2 over these next 2 games. There's no doubt, though, like this is one of those seasons where you rolled the dice, it came up snake eyes, and everybody got hurt. And maybe they will be, at some point, a much healthier team than they are at the beginning of the season. The other thought I had was they better be, because when you get into that tough part of the schedule, it is impossible to play those really good teams if you have half of your roster. So get it out of the way now. I know that's not a coaching point. Like you can't, that's the only thing they can hope for, is that it gets out of the way now. And some of these absences will be over with by the time they're coming out of the bye and playing some really, really tough teams. So there you go. Aaron Jones to IR. Cam Akers can still play and has been a great fit here with the Vikings. He's still got some acceleration. I think that probably other teams haven't loved the injury history there. I don't think that he has the quickest right to left anymore. Like he's going to have to be a straight kind of downhill type of runner, but he's somebody that they can at least somewhat rely on and will know the offense and can step in, and did a pretty good job last year, had some explosive runs, had the best play of the game in that game against Detroit, and actually gave them a chance to hang around in that game with an explosive run. I don't know why, what was he with the Saints, why they decided, they didn't want him or whatever, but if he's what he was last year, that at least is somebody that can step in and be fairly effective just to spell occasionally Jordan Mason. But these next few weeks are Jordan Mason all the way. So last night, I didn't answer a lot of questions on the show when we went live. It was mostly our roundtable with Brian Murphy and Manny Hill. After this, go back and check that out. It's a really good conversation. So now, happy to answer your questions. Oh, and the one thing I wanted to bring up, because there's going to be this conversation that just exists in the air about JJ McCarthy. When is he going to come back? How bad was it really? Whose fault was it anyway? That's back. The whose fault was it anyway? Can he come back and bounce back from some of these issues, etc.? And I think that not necessarily on purpose, Wes Phillips shined some light onto some of the issue with JJ McCarthy, which is he was talking about the quick game. Alec Lewis asked him about the quick game, and he said something to the effect of, if you're going to have it, the quarterback has to be very good at throwing it before it presents itself, being on time, throwing to spots. And that's stuff that takes a lot of experience. Even if you go back and watch a young Drew Brees game for the, and to me, he was like an all-time great quick game quarterback. If you go back and watch him in San Diego, his decisions aren't that quick. And what I've wondered about in the last few days is, how do you develop this quarterback with a team that's this good, with a team with this high of expectations, and a quarterback that needs to play a lot of football? And the answer might just have to be that you live and die with him in the second half of the season when he comes back. But that's a hard thing to do if you win with Carson Wentz, who seems to have a skill set that would fit really well with Kevin O'Connell. So that is the big challenge to me, is that I think what we saw from JJ McCarthy in different spurts was all the things that we expected from him when we talked about him having a good training camp, where it was, and there were a lot of up and down days, by the way, in training camp, which we also talked about. But as he came to develop throughout camp, it was good velocity on the football. He's improving when it comes to his touch. He's improving when it comes to his timing and his rhythm in the offense and all those things, and looks like a guy who's got the tools to be an NFL starting quarterback. We saw all that in these two games in tiny spurts. You know, Wes Phillips highlighted the throw to Jalen Naylor where he toe taps. It's a great throw. It's in rhythm. It's hitch, make the right decision. Bang, you got a 20-yard play. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. The throw to Naylor at the end of the first half in Chicago, the throw to Jefferson along the sideline, some of the scrambles, like you've seen all the stuff that's there, that the pieces are there, the arm strength is there, the physical ability to run, the leadership I think we saw, the toughness I think we saw, it's all there. But how do you get him on the field to play if he's injured for all of last season and he's injured now this season? And when you start to do the math, what if he misses 4 games, if he misses the max that was reported, 4 games, 4 out of 17 is still missing, what is that, like 30% of the season? Math people, you can help me with that. Missing 30% of the season is really hard after missing 100%. So out of a total of 36 games, the best he could do is 34 games. The best he could do right now is 13. That's just tough. That's just tough to develop and to improve. And that's why coming out of the Falcons game, my feeling was, let him fight through it, let him play through it, work on it, coach it better, use more easy buttons, get more, do whatever it takes there. And now they don't even have the opportunity to do that with a high ankle sprain. Then he's got to come back from a high ankle sprain. So they are in a tough spot of trying to just figure out how to develop this quarterback on the fly. And it's amazing how one thing can happen, just one tackle, and then all of a sudden it's kind of disarray for where this position is at for the Minnesota Vikings. Didn't see that coming walking out of US Bank Stadium the other night. So let me get to your questions, comments. I'm a little far behind already because I've been, chattering, but we'll try to catch up here. And then Sirles coming up around 7:30, Maggie Robinson after that. I also, for tomorrow night, have Sam Monson. We talked today and had a really good conversation as well, and we'll have that for you tomorrow night. So let's begin with Digital Plains Media says, Matthew, percent chance McCarthy comes back and plays well versus Philly after the bye week. I'll hang up and listen. I'll go with a 40% chance that he comes back, plays well. We'll have to see about that. Philadelphia is good. Philadelphia is not untouchable. If you watched Milton Williams at all the other day against Miami, oh my goodness, Milton Williams worth the money for New England, but he's not in Philadelphia anymore. It's not an ideal place to start. It is at home to get back on the field. A bye week gives him at least time to get healthy. To me, the percent chance really depends on what their record is. If they lose in London to Cleveland, if they lose this week to Jake Browning and the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're talking about a 2-3 football team that looks like now it's just going to have to scrap and claw to even be on the in the hunt graphic, you got to play JJ McCarthy, and you got to find the heck out whether this guy can play. And you just ride it out unless it looks so bad that you just can't play him. You just ride it out. And you have him play against Lamar, and you have him play against Hurts, and you have him play against Herbert, and all those great players and teams and tough venues and everything else. Because you know what? If he's going to be a great NFL quarterback, he's going to have to beat those people someday. There's no way around it. There's no easy way of, well, you just kind of keep him over here and play him against the Bears every time or something. There's no way to do that. You're going to have to beat the Lamar Jacksons of the world if you want to be a great quarterback. So I think if they're at 2-3 or worse, then you just play them. If they're 3-2, that's the hardest part. That would depend entirely on, are they 3-2 with Wentz has a 64 quarterback rating? Well, then fine, go back. But if Carson Wentz wins the next 3 games, and I'm just using QB rating because, whatever, there's a bunch of metrics you could look at, but let's just use QB rating for the heck of it. Like if he has a 95 quarterback rating, he's completing 62% of his passes. He's got 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, and they're 3-0. You got to keep playing Carson Wentz because as long as you're in the playoff race, you got to keep playing the starting quarterback who's winning games. Jacob said, want to say anyone who's blaming you for setting expectations too high is insane. You painted a realistic picture of what to expect. Never change. Thank you, Jacob. That is very kind of you. I think that the hard part throughout training camp this year is trying to see something that isn't real football and then project it onto real football. It's looking at a training camp situation where they're doing the best they can to send stuff at JJ McCarthy and to have him run the entire offense the way they want to run it and simulate down to a T. And I know that I wanted him to play more in preseason. I saw a lot of that. Why didn't he play more in preseason? I don't blame you for that take. Don't necessarily disagree with that take. But you get into the joint practices and he plays really, really well in the joint practices. And we come out of that and go, well, that's as close as you're going to get. But there is no way to simulate it. And I like to play guitar. You guys know that. Think about this. Up in my home office, I can shred it. Man, I'll play just about anything up in my home office with nobody around. Maybe my wife and dog are listening in the other room. But is that playing in front of US Bank Stadium? Absolutely not. And I can tell you I'd be a much worse player out in front of US Bank Stadium or at Soldier Field with a crowd of 70,000. Anybody who plays guitar with Taylor Swift or with some big pop act, I promise you that person is elite because that is a totally different story. And it's the same with this. Everything is different when you're out there with real people and there's no way to simulate it. And so I think throughout what I tried to convey was I think there's going to be bumps along the way. I like a lot of stuff he's doing and I think it's going to work. And I didn't really change that after Atlanta until he got hurt, but I can't guarantee you anything. And I also think that healthy, this roster's really good. They're not healthy. And I will say that the biggest concern was stopping the run. And now that remains the biggest concern. And I guess we will go back to a Harrison Phillips trade and probably look at that and go, at some point, if they continue to struggle against the run, like that was kind of your run guy. And that's why it was a surprising trade. Though I don't necessarily think the interior was the worst part of that, the run issue. I think setting the edge, talk about Dallas Turner was a big problem there. But there's a lot of different things when it comes to the training camp and setting expectations. This was a major part of their timeline was to build this roster this way. And they brought in a lot of talented players. And they're 1-1, by the way. They're not 0-2. The season's not over. I still think they could be pretty good. But I don't think I came in every night like, hey, guys, he's perfect. He's flawless. He's going to be the GOAT. Like, don't worry. There's nothing to worry about. It's like, well, every once in a while he throws a football. It doesn't make any sense. It just flies over everybody. I mean, we did talk about that stuff. It's just that the first impression was so good in Chicago and you built up and you built up and you built up for this. And I think I talked about it a little bit was this concept, the myth of McCarthy, like the concept of McCarthy was very strong. This is the guy, the start of the era, the franchise quarterback you've been waiting for such a long time. That I also did talk about quite a bit because of the history of this team. So, I mean, that's another thing that built up to the excitement. And then the first game, he comes out and plays great in the fourth quarter and wins. I don't blame anybody for getting excited about this. And I don't think one bad game against Atlanta should have washed that all away. It's just that now everything's so much more complicated. It's not that I don't think McCarthy could be a good quarterback, but when you start to get into realistic scenarios, it's not hard to see one where he doesn't play again this year, where they're in the playoffs and Wentz is the guy. It's not hard to see that. Or it's not hard to see another scenario where he's in over his head for this season and then they're next year having a quarterback competition because the NFL moves fast. So that's just the realities of the league. But I don't think I would change any way that I covered individual practices or came back and talked with you guys. It's just that in some ways things have not gone the way that they expected. Injuries are definitely one of them. Cody says, has anyone asked Kevin about so many deep balls, really wondering why he insisted on calling deep plays with a rookie? The problem I think there is, and that's what I was alluding to with quick game, is that it's very hard for an inexperienced quarterback to throw quick game with the timing that it takes. And now Jeremiah and I are going to talk about this a little later. But about like, I agree with you in general that there has to be more easy buttons for him. But when you look at his short passing, he is 8 for 15 short passing for 51 yards, which is 3.4 yards per attempt, and has 2 turnover worthy plays in the short passing game. It's actually not something that I think fits super well with his skill set at the moment. I think actually the best passes for JJ McCarthy are 15 to 25 yards, where putting all of your might into a throw actually makes sense. But the touch passes, the short stuff that has a lot to do with reading multiple parts of the defense and coverage and then fitting it into spaces, I don't know if that's the best fit for him right now. And I think that showed in the last couple games. Jay says Jones is on IR for how long? That we don't know. 4 weeks is the minimum, and then we'll see after that. But not sure. As far as the FanDuel question of the day, which is the Vikings are plus 184 to make the playoffs. 9 teams have better odds to make the postseason. Brett says not an overreaction to move them down like that. I shot you 99. I need to do a deep dive on hamstring injuries. Cashman was just running and pulled a hammy. Yeah, I don't understand hammies. And if any team did, how about baseball? How often does that happen where they just, if you've ever had one, you kind of understand how almost weird it is. So this happened to me one time, and it's funny because I was playing catch with my wife. Like we had baseball gloves, just playing catch, and she kind of threw one up over my head, and I went back and I kind of like really ran for it, and I just like pulled a hammy. Like I don't know. Like I jog all the time. I stretch. Sometimes it just happens. There's not a whole lot you could do about it. Justin Jefferson, guy who's in peak condition, you can't get better than that, pulls a hammy. I don't think there's any answer for any training staff of you just sort of wave a magic wand of the Tyler Williams. And I think the Vikings are as good as it gets. The cream of the crop. Everyone I've ever talked to has said this is good as it gets for training staff, but you're not Magic. You can't just make Aaron Jones 5 years younger. Nick says FanDuel, not an overreaction. Injury bug avoided us last year. This year we're getting all of them. Yeah, that's definitely true. Let's see. Nathan says situation is pretty grim. Vegas isn't going to peddle hope. And I agree with that. The folks at FanDuel, they understand you get to the backup quarterback, your chances of making the postseason goes down. Hunter says Cam Akers and KOC is proof that love isn't dead. Yeah, I got a text from a friend of like, do you think my wife will ever love me as much as KOC loves Cam Akers? He is always available. That helps. He's a warrior, though, Cam Akers. I mean, he is one of the toughest guys you're ever going to run into. So if you're going to find that guy who's on the street who you could bring in, I mean, you can't do much better than that. But it still is tough to lose Aaron Jones. Jay says, let's stay positive, 10-7. I don't think 10-7 is insane. I think that what FanDuel is suggesting is probably fair to drop them out of the playoffs when you get to this spot. I think it was Hunter who said, are we doomed? That I don't know, because it's a hard thing to figure out when you have a team like this that historically when they've gone to their backup, it's been great for them. It's comical how many times it's happened in history where even last year, I think JJ McCarthy probably wouldn't have ended up starting, but if he did, you've got Sam Darnold there. Like Sam Darnold wasn't the guy that anyone wanted to start, just like it wasn't Case Keenum was not the guy that anybody wanted to start, or you go back even, much before that. I would even throw Gus Frerotte the one year where he came back and he was supposed to be Tavares' backup, and he ends up as a guy who's taking them to a playoff game. And I know they probably should have started him in that playoff game. And then before that, Cunningham, nobody wanted Jeff George to start once upon a time. He ends up taking them to the playoffs and having a great year. I mean, it has happened so many times throughout Vikings history that it would not be a shock if they made their way to the playoffs with Carson Wentz. And if he played pretty well, it wouldn't be a shock based on his skill set either, or his experience either. He's got a huge arm. He's a huge dude. Like what usually works out with KOC? Big arm, right? Being able to throw the football down the field. He can do that. So I don't think all hope is lost for a 10-win, 11-win season, but it will really tell us these next 3 games where this thing is going. That is what we're going to find out. The next 3 games will tell us, I think, the direction this is going to go. Brosmer season says, feel like the Vikings need to rebuild if the next 2 seasons don't work out. And this one is already off to a bad start, right? I mean, I wouldn't go too far on trying to figure out the big picture when we don't even know what the next 3 weeks is going to look like at the quarterback position, because of all the different scenarios, there's one where McCarthy just comes back, plays really well in the second half of the season. They make the playoffs, and then you go from there. That's, if we're doing pie charts of scenarios, I mean, that's definitely one of them. Is it the favorite? Probably not, but it's one of them that he comes back, gets it together, gets experience, gets confidence. You've never been, I mean, we talk about a roller coaster, but this is whiplash with the last 2 weeks and where we've gone from that. But I don't think that I can see the bigger picture yet with this team. They're getting Addison back. They're getting Darisaw back eventually. And that's going to help them a lot. They'll get Cashman back. They'll get Van Ginkel back. They'll get all this talent back and maybe be the team that they are supposed to be in the second half of the season. I mean, 2 games is just so little. Jay said about did I agree with Kwesi signing the veteran players in the offseason? And, I did a lot. But also with the caveat that we talked about the risk, right? I mean, because I remember talking about this when ESPN gave them bad grades for the signings. And my argument was that, like, I get that in a vacuum, but in the bigger context of things, you're trying to build this deep and talented and veteran roster around the rookie quarterback contract because this has worked. And you don't have to go too far to look. My favorite example of this was the Los Angeles Rams the first time with Jared Goff in 2017, where they brought in a bunch of veteran players, the Robert Woods, the Sammy Watkins, the Andrew Whitworth. There was, it was a half dozen of them that they brought in for veteran players around Jared Goff. But the difference is that they just were healthy, and Jared Goff was healthy, and they were able to, have a great season that year, but they kept their guys on the field when they signed those veteran players. When they're healthy and it works, then you're the genius GM who spent the money the right way. If there's some injuries, then you're a dope. And that's the coin you flip. But also, that's what you do in this scenario. I mean, think about San Francisco. San Francisco traded for Christian McCaffrey with a first round pick. They were crazy, right? I mean, I thought they were. I thought, what are you trading for a running back for? You guys always have great running backs. That guy's injured all the time and whatever. And then he almost wins MVP. Maybe he did offensive player of the year, and they go to the Super Bowl and you go, I don't know. This is what you do normally when you get in this scenario, but you don't expect your quarterback to get hurt in the second week. So I'm sorry the comments are moving a little fast for me. I'll try to keep keep up here. Yo MTV Raps. Oh no, I missed that one. They disappear on me if I let them sit too long. So I'm appreciative, but I'm usually not struggling. I'm struggling a little bit today. Hunter says the only thing you can do about the injury bug is have a Hall of Fame quarterback. That's true. That when you end up with the injury bug around the quarterback that doesn't have a lot of experience, there's not much you can do. But I would say that's not an excuse for this next couple weeks because they still have more talent than these teams. Kurt says the easiest answer is to pound the rock with Mason, go over the top in the pass game. KOC likes to get cute. There are times where I would agree with the getting of the cute. Yep, I think so. I think we can look at probably these first two games, maybe 5 or 6 examples of that. The one that I think bugs me the most, 2 of them are at the goal line on first down and then going in an empty protection on first down where you're already getting killed by the other team's pass rush and they're doing a great job of getting home and then you have an empty protection. It's just, to me, that was putting too much on the quarterback, too big of a risk, and it did not end up paying off for them. But you're right, though, with Carson Wentz. Like this, he's going to have to push the ball down the field. If there's a guy to do it, it's probably Carson Wentz. But he does have a tendency to hang on to the ball a little bit, and that could be problematic considering where they're at with their offensive line. Kurt adds that the line is so bad right now, trying to make sure that the ship doesn't take on too much water. That's where they really need Darisaw back. Yo MTV Raps says Jordan Addison being gone had a bigger impact than I imagine, which is why I hope we can re-sign him when the time comes. Jordan Addison was the best receiver in training camp. He's one of the best. I would say he was top 5 player in training camp. Maybe Grenard was number 1, but he was right there in training camp. And not having him for 3 weeks has been a major issue for them. Will says, what's your feeling on Hawkinson? TJ Hawkinson, at least from what I've seen so far, it feels like it does not have something there that was there before the injury. And a lot of times when it comes to injuries, especially an ACL, we sort of on the outside treat it like Madden, where we go, well, it says 3 weeks on my little Madden injured player, and that means he'll come back in 3 weeks and his ratings will just be perfect. And I mean, I don't know if they do this. I haven't played the recent Maddens over the last few years. I'm still playing Madden 04, but they probably should have guys that are impacted in some ways by whatever injury they had in different attributes, because that's real life. At the same time, I would have to look back specifically at Hawkinson, because it just feels like, is McCarthy not finding the middle of the field? When you look at the spray chart where he's thrown the ball, and I saw some people pointing this out, it's like a lot to the right side of the field, and it's not been a lot to the middle of the field. I think I can pull this up. How often he's thrown to the middle of the field? 6 times in the intermediate areas in the first 2 games, 4 times short to the middle of the field. 4 in 2 games. That's where TJ Hawkinson lives. That's 10 attempts to the short middle or intermediate middle part of the field for McCarthy. And actually the intermediate, middle of the field. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I misread that. Only two passes to the intermediate. That means from 10 to 20 yards. Only 2 passes there and only 4 passes short. There is no way that with TJ Hawkinson on this team that they don't have plays for the short middle of the field. Not in an offense that did a great job of that with Kirk Cousins. Brett says, why are you giving up on McCarthy after 2 games? I am not giving up on McCarthy after 2 games. What I try to lay out, and is not really settled very well with Vikings fans, and I get it, but just based on history and how this league works, there's a quarterback in year 3 in Indianapolis watching Daniel Jones. There's a quarterback in San Francisco who got a couple of starts. Actually, I think had an amazing win against the Bears to open his career, if I remember it right, like in the rain, Trey Lance, and he got hurt. And we spent an entire offseason being like, well, Trey Lance could come back. And then he doesn't win a QB competition. Purdy outplays him. and Darnold outplays him, and then he's gone. And how many years was he there? 3? I mean, we're at year 2 for JJ McCarthy. These things happen fast. That doesn't mean that I think that's going to happen, or it has the highest odds to happen, or that I think they should give up on him, or I think they wasted the draft pick, or I think he's a bust, or any of that. But if the guy doesn't play, you can't find out. And they're not in a spot where they can just sort of wait and wait and wait and play him and play him and play him. Like, they're not Carolina. Carolina is in a position where nobody thinks that team's going to win anything, and they're not in their timeline ready to win. So they could just keep playing Bryce Young. Honestly, Chicago is a little bit in that spot. As much as we're making fun of them, and as much as we're, watching Caleb Williams and saying nothing's different, they can play Caleb Williams for the whole season, and they can find out what they really have in Caleb Williams, get a big enough sample, because they weren't going to win anything anyway. No matter how many people power ranked them as the second best team in the division and gave them their offseason championship or whatever, that sort of stuff, they weren't going to win this year, Chicago. So they can let it play out and they can find out. That's not how the Vikings played this. The Vikings played this to win right now. And they have a roster that's built. And I think it was Kwesi told maybe Albert Breer that they have a 3-year window. I still look at it as a little more 2, and then things get pretty murky. So nobody is giving up on JJ McCarthy. But if you don't acknowledge the realities of this situation and the possibilities that Carson Wentz could play really well and they could just not go back to him, and then next year you're talking about a QB competition, well, that's kind of ignoring recent history and how fast these things move, because you get to year 3. I mean, then you're talking about not too much time left on that rookie quarterback contract. So I don't think that this is all going to happen to where Wentz starts the rest of the year and where he takes them to the playoffs and we never hear JJ McCarthy's name again. It's just that stuff like this does happen when that quarterback continually gets hurt and never gets a chance to be better. I think he's got the tools for it. I think he's got the work ethic. I think he's got the demeanor. I think that the locker room bought into him and was ready to keep supporting him going forward into this week. But then you have another stoppage where you're talking about him watching and trying to learn from the sideline and not playing when he's a guy that has to be playing. So T6 says the good news is Carson can't do much worse than JJ. Well, also you have to admit that based on what we saw from Sam Darnold last year, Carson Wentz gives them a better chance to win right now. He just does. Like, his experience, he's a 500 career quarterback who's won a lot of games in the past and has thrown 27 touchdowns, 7 picks the last time he started an entire season, and got 9 wins for his team that was not as good of a team as this. So he actually does give you probably a better chance to win than a quarterback who's still very much feeling things out. And that's part of the issue, is if Wentz has a bad game, then everyone's going to want McCarthy back in, or 2 bad games in a row. And if you're like, no, I'll be patient. Like last year, people wanted to sign Ryan Tannehill midway through the Jacksonville game with Sam Darnold. Like, this is a league that doesn't have a lot of patience. So it's a very rocky situation for this franchise to manage now. Carlin said that Jones looked slow. Didn't look like he had the same jolt. Yep, I agree with that. There wasn't the same jolt that was there as was the case last year, where he looked very quick. BK says Philly line didn't need Milton or doesn't need Milton. No, I mean, they have a good defense. They have a very good defense. Bobby says, you think KOC correcting JJ's stance in camp had any effect, like learning to write left-handed? That's the NFL, though, is that you have to learn a lot of new stuff. You have to learn a lot of things that you have to do different in the NFL from college, because if you want to see someone come in and try to run their college offense, well, then, that's what you end up with Caleb Williams, where they tried to run the college offense of Caleb Williams and it ended up being like not good enough for the NFL. So you have to have NFL level technical stuff, including your stance, including your steps and your timing and all that stuff, where college gives you a lot of leeway. College gives you people wide open all over the field. You just have to get it to them, and you're probably going to succeed. And McCarthy was able to do that at Michigan. A lot of favorable situations, but he was good at ripping it in there. There's just a much greater level of detail at the NFL level. Kurt says, can you imagine being 1-4 and spending that much money in free agency because you can't draft? I'm not sure that, okay. So, I mean, I guess you could say the drafting part of it, that we don't need to get into that, but if they go 1-4 and spend this much money, it's happened before. Let's see. Oh man, it's moving too quickly for me. I'm trying to keep up. So if I miss your comment, I'm sorry about that. But, like if they end up 1-4, it will be because they had a lot of things go wrong with injuries and because they made the wrong bet at the quarterback position in going with JJ McCarthy. I don't think it's a matter of building a roster that's strong enough. It was building a roster that didn't stay healthy. That's what happened here so far to the rest of the roster. And by the way, I mean, the rest of the roster, well, I think Justin Jefferson could still play. The offensive line has been banged up, though. The defense gave up 12 points into the fourth quarter. I don't know what more you could actually ask from them for the defense to do. The run stopping was a problem, but they gave them a chance to win the game, and they were not able to do that on offense. They were not able to hold up their end of the bargain on offense. So I don't know if they didn't build a strong enough team. They certainly didn't build one that could stay healthy, but that's a really hard thing to predict. I don't think it has a lot to do with the drafting necessarily that would have caused it. It would have been just injuries. Unless you think all the younger players stay healthy, but I don't know if they do. Adam says with the super chat, fair to judge the team's leadership for giving McCarthy the job this offseason? No, because every single one of you would have said, give McCarthy the job. I know. Here's how I know. Because I've been doing this long enough to have been live in Glendale, Arizona, looking at the chat then after they lost to the Los Angeles Rams. And I remember coming in here and talking about from time to time about the idea of bringing back Sam Darnold, and the chat would light up wanting to come to the house with pitchforks. Every time I said, well, they might bring back Sam Darnold, it would just go crazy. Nobody wanted that. I don't think that you can question the process of drafting a quarterback and developing him throughout the offseason and then putting him in the game with a stacked roster around him. I think it's hard to predict that you're going to not have your left tackle ready when it looked like maybe he was going to be ready, or that, I don't know. It's hard to find left tackles, but the left tackle was as bad as it could possibly be. I don't know if you could predict that McCarthy, based on his camp, was going to struggle that much against the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know that you could have expected, Andrew Van Ginkel and Blake Cashmere, two of the best in the league, to be down. And no surprise, you're not tackling as well when you don't have those two guys in there. So, yeah, once we're here and McCarthy is injured, then it is pretty easy to say, well, I guess you screwed it up. I'm not even sure they screwed it up yet, though, because McCarthy could very reasonably come back in and have it click and play well, and they can compete for the playoffs. That's on the table. We can't start saying who are we supposed to shoot the arrows at when they did everything that you wanted them to do this offseason and have just truly had bad breaks. And I was not ready to write off JJ McCarthy after a bad game. And I went through it the other night. I looked at all the worst games since 2000 that quarterbacks have played for the Minnesota Vikings. And I found a lot of good names who had really, really bad games. And I think we all agree Kirk Cousins was a very good quarterback. Dante Culpepper, Brad Johnson, those guys were very good quarterbacks. They had bad games. And I still felt like they would find things and they would correct things with McCarthy. It's just now we don't know exactly where this is going with him because of his injury. But as far as the process of drafting a quarterback in year 2, starting him, spending all the money in free agency, I look at these other teams and it's worked. It's worked a lot of times. And going with him was the entire organization's decision to go with him and develop him over this offseason and then ride out through the ups and downs that were inevitable to happen. And that's the one thing I would say is that there's just no ever preparing yourself truly for what it looks like when a young quarterback struggles, because it always looks bad. It has looked, I mean, even with Bo Nix, I'm sure there's some people in Denver being like, what is going on with, he's still an inexperienced quarterback. I'm sure that Michael Penix will have some games, and he had some moments the other night that were pretty tough. And that's just how it goes. CJ Stroud is having some tough moments. Jaden Daniels is having some tough moments. This is a very hard league. Lamar Jackson, it wasn't easy for him in his first year. Second year came out and, went crazy. But Josh Allen took 3 years. There's just not too many examples where they just walk in and just run over the NFL. So I didn't expect that. But I think him looking as bad as he did was very jarring, probably for everybody. I don't think anybody in the front office or anybody in the coaching staff would have expected it to go that badly in that game. Let's see. Enemy Cap says, let's say Wentz looks okay-ish and wins 2 of the next 3. Is the front office going to feel comfortable throwing, well, it's really the coaching staff, McCarthy back in there against the Eagles, Chargers, Lions, then Ravens? For me, that's a very tough ask. It's a very tough ask. If you're 3-2, and I think that what that would have to depend on is just how he's able to play. How does Carson Wentz play? Because if Carson Wentz plays really well and they lose a game to Pittsburgh, like 28-27 or something in Dublin, all right. I mean, that's pretty good. If he's 2-1 and they're 3-2 and he's played well and he is running the offense and he's hitting explosives, and Jefferson, we don't have to send anybody to jail because Jefferson has 10 catches and all that sort of stuff. If that is how it goes, then he's probably going to stay in as the starter because of how difficult that next run is going to be. But really, it's just hard to know. Let's get FanDuel question of the day. More of your answers. Overreaction to it being plus 184 to make the playoffs, 9 teams with better odds than the Vikings. Is that an overreaction? That's the FanDuel question of the day. And also want to remind you and allow me to just make a joke here that if you've been tearing your hair out and maybe need some hair solutions because of the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, I'm just kidding. Let me restart. Okay. If you are dealing with hair loss and you are frustrated, then there's help, and it's not hard. With Hims, you can take the next step with confidence, access treatments with clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil to stop hair loss and regrow hair within 3 to 6 months. You don't have to deal with waiting rooms or hoops or any ingredients that don't have a track record. Like these ingredients have a track record of success. Hims offers you convenient access to a range of prescription hair loss treatments. You can do it whatever way you want to do it. Choose oral medication, sprays, whatever works for you. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself again. Hims makes it very easy, brings expert care to you with 100% online access to personalized treatments that put your goals first with no hidden fees, just personalized care. So go to hims.com/Purple Insider for simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, number of things that you could get there. Hims.com/Purple Insider. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription required. See the website for safety information. Whew, it is quite a time here, quite a time to be having this conversation. Let me get back on track. And I've got the conversation with Jeremiah Sirles waiting in the wings, but you guys are kind of on a roll here. Sean says, when do we have to start having a serious conversation about Hockenson? Tight end is supposed to be a young quarterback's best friend, and his Butterfingers on Sunday continue to poor trend since the knee injury. I don't disagree. And I have a great respect for TJ Hockenson, and that's why I kind of wonder about when the quarterback has only thrown 6 passes to the middle of the field per the PFF data, what that's about. And him not bringing in that ball also, I think, had to do with the defensive back was just right there and ready for that play. And does that have to do with JJ McCarthy staring down where he's going with the football? Because somebody asked about that last week, and I said, I don't really know. It's hard to say sometimes on the tape. The tape wasn't that bad with that. I thought that this time he was staring down a lot of guys. And I thought he was staring down somebody on that play, being TJ Hawkinson. Just he's going exactly where he's looking, and they know. And when you stare down receivers, opposing defenses wait on it. They train for that. They're ready for it. And that seemed to be a problem the other night. Hawkinson doesn't look like he has quite the same burst, though. He was pretty quick before, and it just hasn't had the same confidence either from him that we have expected over the years of him being a Pro Bowl caliber player. And I'm not sure what to say about that, though, because I wouldn't be surprised either if Carson Wentz came out and leaned heavily on Hawkinson and just threw him the ball and, moved the ball effectively and et cetera, et cetera. He goes back to being a Pro Bowl caliber player. I think we're going to have to wait and find that out. Enemy can't cap, still believe McCarthy could be a good QB. And then I lost the comment. I'm doing a bad job of this. I think that JJ McCarthy, in order to still be a good QB, because I think what you were alluding to is like 2026 and going forward. If that's going to happen, if McCarthy's still going to be a good quarterback, I think that he needs to be in the game this year. That he needs to be back playing for at least half the season so they know what they're working with and they know how much he has to learn in order to get better. And the really unfortunate part of that is that the most likely scenarios are either Wentz plays great and McCarthy doesn't get back in, or Wentz doesn't play great and the season is pretty lost and you end up with a 2010-ish majorly hyped up season that's kind of down the drain, and you're playing for just the development of JJ McCarthy the rest of the way. And those two options are not what was expected for this team. That's where the realities of this are pretty tough. And maybe it does end up, somebody mentioned the Gus and T-Jack season where you're playing Gus Frerotte and then trying to get Jackson back in, and you're kind of going back and forth. You got a little bit of a quarterback controversy. And, Brett says Wentz just has to go win to stay the starter. If he stumbles, they'll go back to McCarthy. And right, I agree. That's the thing that makes the most sense, is for them to see how Carson Wentz is performing and then go back to McCarthy if he struggles. But if he struggles with the schedule they have, you're probably out of this playoff race in the division that they are playing in and in the conference that they're playing in. The South has 2 teams you could see making it. The West has at least 2 teams, maybe 3. Mac Jones was able to win a game for the 49ers. I mean, they look like a team that could still grind out a playoff appearance. The Rams certainly do. Seattle looks pretty good the other day with Sam Darnold. So it won't be easy to just end up, Jim NFL says, 8-9. Like that, it's pretty easy to see an 8-9 type of season. And if that's what they end up with, then you're kind of just bouncing up and down of, well, you're in it, you're not in it. You guys have been through that in many seasons. And then when do you play McCarthy? And if you bring him in and then he plays poorly, do you pull him out? And then it's reminding me of 2023 where you're trying Jaren Hall and we all agree, yeah, give Jaren Hall a shot. And then it looks bad. You're like, get him out of there. And it's like, that's where it gets so difficult because nobody really knows exactly how this is going to play out. But I think that you're right that if Wentz goes on a winning streak, you just keep playing Wentz. And if he does not, then you go back to McCarthy and you see what you got. Madden 11, where has Oliver been? Oliver had an ankle injury, and I think that has really slowed him down because they could have used him way more in the game the other night. And they also had Nick Vannett out there, I think, and Ben Urasek a little. I think that he's grinding through a pretty difficult injury. Abe says this is 4 games in a row. We've had really the same story. Quarterbacks look frozen and shook. McCarthy didn't do great, but this is the reality. Darnold also really struggled. I don't think that we can link them together, that we can link the end of last season with the start of this season. It's just so different. It's a different team. You're playing the Rams. You're playing the Lions, 2 teams competing for the Super Bowl last year. These opponents were not quite as good as that. But I don't totally disagree that the recent sample size of this offense has looked like the quarterback is just getting chased around. Looks like he doesn't quite know where to go with the football, whether it was Darnold, who did miss a number of passes against Detroit, but then just got sacked and sacked and sacked. And then it happens again. Like, has there been something solved? That's kind of hard to say with just 4 games. But I think that the 4 games do have some things in common. They don't have very many screens that hit. They don't have a running game that dominated. They don't have a ton of easy play action passes. It's been a lot of out of the shotgun, and it's been a lot of, there was a play action they ran against the Rams where they got murdered. So that happened, but there hasn't been a lot of easy button stuff for the quarterback in those last couple games. I don't want to go all the way down that road though, because the games before that, like, this is why in statistics, you're always hesitant to make arbitrary endpoints, because if you go back to the Falcons game last year, you go back to the Packers game, the quarterback played extremely well. But there is a moment though where I think that a team specifically last year figured out something against this offense that maybe hasn't totally been resolved yet. And that would be the Arizona Cardinals game. In the Cardinals game, they forced the Vikings to try to sort through a lot of different rushers coming from different spots. Blitzers, delayed blitzes, stunts, and the Falcons got free runners on Sam Darnold, and he just made plays out of it, or their corners fell down. And he just did an incredible job against the Packers getting ahead in that game, but they got some QB hits as well, and they got some pressures. So I do think that there may have been something in that game that everybody started looking at of, well, this is how you kind of deal with this more downfield offense and how you deal with some of the blocking schemes. And especially if they're going to run empties and have the running back go out and not stay in to give extra protection, or have the tight end. I mean, everybody knows with Hockenson, if he's in the game, he's going out for a pass. He's not staying in to help block. So you got 5-on-5 if you're sending an extra rusher. Like, there are some tendencies here. T6, Hawk is paid like a top 3 tight end. He's not a top 3 tight end. I just want to see a little more than that. We're 2 games into this. And I think for some reason, you guys have treated Hawkinson's last year as if he was just horrific. And I don't really think that about last year for him. I don't think he was the same as he was having missed half the season, but he ended up with 46 catches, 519 yards, and a PFF grade that was only 4 points lower than the year before. So I don't think it was that bad last year. I haven't liked what I've seen, but is that because McCarthy isn't seeing him and isn't getting him the ball? And it can be really hard to get in a rhythm as a wide receiver when the ball never comes to you. It can be difficult if you're one of those guys. Let's see. Pridham, sorry if I got that wrong. What you will get if you go with Wentz and lose in the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. Like what happens? And he says people need patience. Like, what happens if you stick with Wentz and you get into the first round and then you lose? And you end up with another season that goes 10-7, 9-8, first round out. You're not a serious contender. Yeah, that's a circle of hell that the Vikings have lived in that they don't want to live in. Continue. And they took a shot with all this to not live in that. They tried to build a roster that does not live in that hell. But what they didn't factor for is the quarterback after 2 weeks getting hurt and potentially being out for 4 weeks and maybe much more. I still think that the process of this was the right thing to do, to go with the younger quarterback and the cheaper quarterback. And if you franchise tag Sam Darnold, it's really, really tough to build a roster that's good enough and actually compete with the big boys. The roster, player for player, when healthy, competes with almost any team in the league. It's not healthy. And the quarterback, through 2 games, has not played well enough to give you confidence that this is going anywhere. But it's only 2 games. It's just, the issue is just getting injured. That's the big issue, is not being out there. If he was still in there, I'd probably be saying, guys, it's 1 game. And we're going to have to be a little more patient. The Duke of Purr says, did it look so disjointed in training camp? Well, not really, no. There were days, and probably a lot of times where I said, hey, there's going to be some times where there are going to be quarters, halves, games where it looks bad. But you're going to have to kind of just not panic as a franchise and not panic as you guys, Vikings fans, either. I mean, you just going to have to work your way through it. And now they don't get a chance to work their way through it. That's what they really needed here, was to find out, but also to give him more time. Because in camp we saw, and in the first game we saw at times, what J.J. McCarthy is capable of doing with his physical skill. And when he's finding receivers, when he's getting in a rhythm, when he gets pass protection, which I assume eventually he'll get from the left tackle position. I think that getting a couple of hits early there sped him way up. But I wasn't ready to jump ship and say that the season was over and that, hey, whatever, because he did look good in camp. But there were ups and downs, as there are with young quarterbacks. Steve says, blame the fans for the Vikings not re-signing Darnold. No, I'm not gonna do that. I think that the fans would have been wholeheartedly against it. I remember saying that I would probably be a little more defensive of that move because of the lack of experience of McCarthy and because Darnold played so well, and it's hard to throw out a 14-win season quarterback and all those things. So I think I would have been a little more on board with it than most people, but the main consensus, yes, from the fans was don't do that, go with McCarthy. But fans don't make the decision. The decision was made by the franchise, and it was based on the history of this league recently. There are 15 examples that we could come up with of teams that built stacked rosters. Heck, the Miami Dolphins had a crack at it when they stacked up their roster and traded for Tyreek Hill with Tua, and they put so much around him. He's not even a great quarterback, and they put so much around him. He was good. I mentioned the Jared Goff, the Jalen Hurts with before he signed his big contract, and they put 50 million void years on it or whatever. But even on his rookie contract, he makes the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy does. Like, this is a proven method. And those guys had bad games as well. Those young quarterbacks had bad games. Brock Purdy had bad games, and they fought their way through it because they had a really good roster. Brock Purdy had a bad game here against the Vikings. Wasn't very good at all. They kept going. They fought through it, and that team ended up being really good. And that was a logical path for this team to take. And not every quarterback in today's game has needed a ton of experience before. So I think we would all defend the idea of going with McCarthy. And I would have defended it still of him fighting through it. You know, the idea of a shadow benching. I would have been against the shadow benching. Like, keep playing him. There's only one way he's going to get better is to keep playing him. Not that I think that it was. I think that it was an injury, and you don't want him to be playing injured. But I would have been against taking him out even if that was a conversation. Because this is the right way to do it. It's the right way to build in the NFC to try to go compete for a championship. And there's an injury, and there's not much you can do. And that's the helpless part of it. Because when something goes wrong, whether it's in a game or whether it's with a decision or if it's a draft pick that didn't work out, what does everybody jump to is, who can we blame? Who can we get after? Whose fault was it? Who should be fired? I don't know if there's anybody for this situation that we can blame other than, maybe there's a little bit too much that was put on his plate too early for the Falcons game. I think there's people we could blame for the Falcons game. Some play calling, some decisions, how much you're putting on the quarterback. That we could do for that game. But for the situation, you could blame whoever tackled J.J. McCarthy. Aaron says I missed that, about training camp. During training camp, he had ups and downs during training camp, and he had issues with accuracy during training camp. But he also played very well at times during camp. And it just doesn't give you all the answers. It gives you a snapshot of where a guy's at in an offseason, but it doesn't just tell you everything. Camp is a hard thing to figure out because in some ways you could say, well, I watched Justin School in camp and it wasn't very good. And then it wasn't very good. And I watched J.J. McCarthy every throw. We wrote down every throw. We analyzed every throw. And when you looked at the totality of it, it felt like he had put them in a position where he could play the spot. And I remember saying that I don't think it's going to look absolutely horrible. And it did the other night for one game. But I thought that there was a floor that he had set by his camp performance. And then you get out there at full speed and it just looks different. Let's see. Nathan says Darisaw has been out since week 8 last year. Darnold won some games, and our line is better this year, even with the injuries. I don't think it's better right now with Juergens in. I think it was better with Ryan Kelly. I think that Cam Robinson was a lot better than Justin School, not at the end against the Rams, but just overall. But Sam Darnold is a really good quarterback. You saw that last week when he beat the Steelers. He's a very talented and very experienced quarterback in the perfect situation. He also had Jordan Addison for most of the year. There was a game or two that he was out, but he had the AFC South helped a lot. But Sam Darnold was 28 years old. He was a guy that knew what he was doing as an NFL quarterback. He had played in many, many games. And if you actually watched Darnold in Carolina in 2022, which of course no one should have, but he had good games. And if you saw any of the games he came in as a backup, he had good games against San Francisco. Like he had developed, but what did Sam Darnold look like early in his career? Well, sometimes it was up, sometimes it was down. It was, the inexperience hurt Sam Darnold from being thrown in the fire early with the Jets. He had some injuries. He got behind because of some injuries. It's hard being a young quarterback in the NFL. It's hard being a veteran. Look, Mahomes doesn't even look that good. Patrick Mahomes has not looked good in 2 years. That's the best quarterback of the generation. It's hard to play quarterback right now. There are not too many QBs in the NFL who are dominating because defenses have really come along. Defenses have figured out a lot of ways to deal with these great quarterbacks. Not Josh Allen. There's no stopping that man. But, even like Matthew Stafford has 543 yards passing in his first 2 weeks. He's the highest graded PFF quarterback. What's that, like 200 and something yards a game? It's not even spectacular. 3 touchdowns. It's not like you go out there in this league and anybody is just lighting it up for insane numbers right now. Actually, really funny. Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones have the most passing yards. Justin Herbert actually is lighting it up. Herbert has been insanely good. And Goff put up 50 and Prescott played really well. It's not impossible, but there's a lot of very bad quarterback play in the league because I think defenses are really, really good right now. So it's not easy for a young quarterback to just come in. And Penix was struggling at times the other night. Thought he played okay, but he was struggling the other night as well against the Vikings defense. Dino says missing Van Ginkel big time. It's a second team All-Pro from last year. Abe says I'll still ride with JJ and he's experienced. That's why we drafted him. If we give up on rookie QBs immediately, we will never develop one. I am with you on that. I'm with you on that. The only trouble is that if you win games with Wentz and then you go back to McCarthy and you don't win games, then you end up going back to Wentz, and then where are you at? Right? Then you're in this position where you're looking around and going, what do we have here? Bobby says Darnold with better protection would have been great. I don't disagree with that. I mean, when he had time to throw, he was really, really good. I have never blamed Sam Darnold for the Rams game. I have always blamed Sam Darnold for the Lions game. The Rams game, they just had he had no chance. No protection, no quick game, no run game. Nobody helped him out at all. They also got kind of a bad call there where they recovered a fumble and there were some momentum plays. Not that he played well, but I just thought the line was so catastrophic. There was nothing you could really do there. But you're still in that same position where JJ McCarthy has had some clean pockets, but he's also had a lot of pressure that has come his way as well. David said, is KOC spoiled by having three veteran quarterbacks his first 3 years of coaching? That's a discussion. I mean, spoiled is a little, maybe I wouldn't use that word when you have Darnold, who had been really bad before, but spoiled in the way that they can handle a lot. Yes, that I would agree with. That even we've made that Mullins comparison, but Mullins could handle a lot mentally, and he could throw the ball to the right place. It's just that it didn't actually arrive there very fast, and sometimes it went way too far, sometimes it went way too short, sometimes it went way behind a guy, but he could throw it to the right spot. And this is built for a veteran quarterback to have to do a lot, and that's why I use that empty protection situation to point that out, is that is not a spot where you want to be putting your young quarterback out there when the defensive line is feasting with no extra protection. Just, hey, go out and figure out that protection on the fly. Remember when Bo Nix had 62 yards? Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about they were going to have to work through some of those tough games, because all of these young quarterbacks have had these tough times. But now they can't. Madden 11, I think it's way too early to call McCarthy a bust. People just, can we just get rid of the word bust? I get so, it's just so like every situation is different if something works or doesn't work out. And every time, it's kind of like the Dallas Turner thing, who I thought as a pass rusher played well the other night, and as an edge setter had a very tough time. That's where, that strength in the offseason, looks like he put on some weight and everything else, but he's still going to have work to do when it comes to the setting edges and stuff like that, to be playing 50 or 60 snaps. Didn't think he had a terrible night, especially rushing the passer, but he's still going to be a work in progress. But last year, the guy doesn't play for 2 weeks and he's a bust. And it's 2 games in for JJ McCarthy, and people are saying he's a bust. Like, what in the world? I mean, quarterbacks, how many have we seen them have injuries, have issues, whatever it might be early on, and then fight through it and become good quarterbacks? Way too early is an understatement. I wouldn't even begin to go there with that. Kurt says, did you notice the losses that we get under KOC? Our teams look sloppy, like they don't know what they're doing, versus just being beat by a good team. Well, they haven't had that many losses under KOC. I guess, does that go for every team who loses games, though, where it looks sloppy? Can we also say Atlanta might actually be a good team? I mean, they have a coach who played really well, who's coached really well in the past defensively, and they drafted a bunch of players who look good on defense. They also might deserve some of the credit on the other side, but when you watch every single moment of your own team, then yeah, you're going to say here's all their mistakes. Cause you don't watch every minute of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Super unknown. What are your thoughts on Ingram, Bradbury, and Ezra Cleveland having the good PFF grades through the first couple weeks? I mean, we've been through that. We've seen that before. We've seen those guys have good grades before. We kind of know who they are. Look, those PFF grades are analyzed so closely for one game. Donovan Jackson was one of the best guards in the league last week. He's one of the worst guards this week. 2 games is not going to give you the answers. He wasn't an MVP offensive lineman last week and then clueless this week. That's not really how it works. But yeah, it's funny that somebody on the internet pointed that out, but let's see. freaker by the speaker. Imagine if the Vikings invested in the lines in the draft over the years instead of two wide receivers not playing well. You're spinning there because they invested a first round draft pick in Donovan Jackson, a first round pick in Dallas Turner. They also, I mean, the offensive line at one point was built entirely out of first and second round draft picks. So I don't know about that. Also, Jordan Addison's not playing. That's true. Technically, Jordan Addison's a really good player, though. Nick Inside Out. I think you reintroduce McCarthy a quarter at a time, let Wentz build a lead, and then bring him in when he's ready. Hard to do. Very hard to do, because if he blows the lead, then what? You put him in the fourth quarter of a game you're winning, like everyone's gonna be like, what are you doing? Like that would look clownish. You're trying to win games. And in an NFL building, you're just trying to win. Like you're trying to play the best person to win that game this week. And that's how they have to approach it. Duke of Purr with a super chat. Thank you. If Wentz is less than okay and the Vikings win either 2 or 3 of the next 3 games, then you bring back JJ to start, right? Like you can win in spite of him. So you're talking about a situation where Carson Wentz plays pretty bad and then wins games. That reminds me of the Case Keenum, where Keenum was not playing all that well in 2017. Early on, he had that crazy game against the Bucs, and then he had some real grinded out, ugly games through a couple of interceptions against Washington, and Zimmer wanted to pull him, it seemed like, but it would have been really hard to put Teddy Bridgewater in after going through the catastrophic injury, and they had that conversation and all that sort of stuff. But he was grinding out the victories, and they decided to keep going with him. I think if Wentz gets on a winning streak, even if he's not playing great, you have to just keep going. I mean, the level that Wentz needs to get to be better is extremely low. They're the worst passing team in the NFL right now. So it's very, very low to get to the level of looking competent. If Wentz throws for 250 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks, and they lose, that'll look great compared to what it's looked like these last 2 weeks. Enemy Cap says J.J. McCarthy absolutely has to play this year, but because of the schedule and how poorly he played in the first 2 games, Wentz will finish out the season. That's a scenario. That is a scenario that is not unrealistic, that because they're here to win games, because the veterans on the team are here to win games, you can't go into the final couple of weeks in the hunt. Like this team was in the hunt in 23 when they were starting Dobbs and Mullins. Like they're probably going to be in the hunt. You can't be going in the hunt and then be like, let's just play the kid. Got to see what we're all about. You can't do that. Not to these number of players who came here for a team that was going to compete for a championship. Especially if they get healthy, then they could be one of those kind of dangerous playoff teams that maybe started with some bumps along the way. The other, I mean, it's not even crazy to think about if they won the next couple of games and then you're sitting there just like right in the middle of the race with Green Bay and Detroit with Wentz at quarterback. It's not crazy considering what they have around the quarterback. Super Unknown says KOC's preference is clearly experienced quarterbacks. Why not follow the Rams blueprint or even last year's blueprint? Well, it's just so easy to say right now. Well, just why didn't they just go with an experienced quarterback? Why didn't they just keep Darnold? Why didn't they just get Aaron Rodgers? Because it looks bad right now. Although, they have Wentz for a reason to come in and play for these situations. The idea was, and I don't think you could say through 2 weeks that it failed. They're 1-1. And in one of the games, McCarthy, I will say the first half of the game, it was ugly, but I didn't think he played anywhere near as bad as the Falcons game. I thought that his decision-making in the Chicago game was pretty decent and that he got some bad breaks and that Jefferson drops 2 passes and you go, okay, well, those passes should have been completed. And I saw Kevin Cole put it out there that his expected points added, he was one of the worst in the league in terms of how much he lost due to drops in a couple of those scenarios that were there. The Thielen pass in the first game, if he played that way against Atlanta, they win the game. So it wasn't catastrophic. And then it was against the Falcons where it was just unplayable. But if you're talking about 2 games, one of them you come out with a win and he plays pretty well, the next game is pretty bad. That's nowhere near enough for me to say, well, KOC can't coach a young quarterback. I don't know. I think he's put a lot on his plate, but I don't think we can make that determination. LD says, does Brosmer seem more capable than JJ from the little that we've seen? Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to ever write anything off because Tom Brady and Brock Purdy and these situations have happened sometimes where a quarterback that you never expect, even like Kurt Warner, comes out of nowhere and becomes great. And then you go, what in the world did I just see? So it does happen. If Max Brosmer played that game instead of JJ McCarthy, he probably would have done better because he is 24 years old. He's played a ton of football over his career in college, ton of football. And he gets the ball out pretty quickly. He processes really fast. And he's not in a learning phase as much of his career. He is, but he isn't. Like, not at 24 years old. He's much more of a developed quarterback. But I don't think you can really go there with the undrafted free agent and start saying, well, what if this guy is the guy? I think, probably not. As much as I really like Brosmer, McCarthy is your franchise quarterback that you have to lean into and do everything you can to find out. Nano Joe, did you watch the All-22? Were receivers open? Yes, they were. Yeah, they were. There were opportunities. Now, there were other times on the All-22 where I did say, you got to give Justin School some help. If you're going to run a straight drop back, you can't just have him one-on-one. Jalen Walker just destroyed him on one rush. You got to get the protection call right. Whoever is responsible for that, you got to get it right. And I know I promised Jeremiah Sirles that's coming up shortly. But Sirles breaks down some of the offensive line stuff. But yes, there were receivers that were there. They were there. The opportunities were there to win the game. And that's what was so tough, I think, for everybody to analyze this game, was that the opportunities were there. And especially when it comes to down the sideline to Jalen Naylor, that's a ball that you just floated up there and he's there and he runs it 50 yards or into the end zone. And you've got a chance to win the game. Like there's 5-6 plays that are just blatantly left out there on the field from JJ McCarthy. There was no silver lining to it. Chicago had silver lining, not only that he won, but also that it wasn't as bad as it looked. Like when we went back to the tape, this was as bad as it looked. Bobby says, compare Brosmer's release time to JJ. It makes a big difference. Yeah, look, I don't want to be critical about Max Brosmer because I like a lot that Max Brosmer does. I think he'll play in the NFL for a long time. And I think he sees the field well. I think his brain is fast. I think his eyes are fast. I think his technique is good. Like, I like a lot about him. JJ McCarthy is a much more physically gifted player who needs more work, who can do a lot of the same things, but in the real games is not the preseason. I mean, we saw Brosmer do it in the fourth quarters of preseason games, third preseason game. And that's me, again, fully buying into Brosmer as a quarterback that I really, really like. But I don't know that if you throw him in there against the Atlanta Falcons, who were killing it that night, that it's going to be different. So, let's see. Kurt, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Purple Insider makes even a terrible scenario to start the season an entertaining rabbit hole. Well, thank you, Kurt. That is a great compliment. I really appreciate that. And I know this is tough for everybody. I do really appreciate the respectfulness of the chat. I think you guys have done a really good job of that. I was a little afraid of it last night and was trying not to look because I just thought this is going to get ugly. And, now we're having the conversation here, I think pretty rationally about where they're at. And I do appreciate that. If you haven't answered the FanDuel question of the day, Vikings are plus 184 to make the playoffs, and 9 teams have a higher odds or better odds to make the playoffs on FanDuel. Do you think that's an overreaction from FanDuel, or do you think that they're dead on And this is a team that is now not likely to make the postseason after what has transpired. So let's see. Road Skull, do you think the fact that JJ is slight will increase the propensity for injury? Okay, so when you compare him to Darnold or Wentz, those guys are enormous dudes, and they've had injuries in their career. Enormous. Carson Wentz is humongous. He's had injuries. Sam Darnold is a big dude. He had injuries last year. He had to leave a couple of games. I think he was probably playing through something with his ankle or foot and his hand last year. Remember, he had the tape, but they would never really say anything about it, and they just kind of moved on. But I'm sure that he had something, a sprain or whatever, in his thumb that impacted his accuracy down the stretch at times. Getting injured and playing quarterback, Burrow's out, Daniels is out, Fields is out. Like, it just happens. But I don't think he's that slight. I think he's pretty big. It's just, I think this one was bad luck. I mean, he's running away from a guy, going to the sideline, and somebody falls on him. The exact same play happened with Patrick Mahomes when he played the Super Bowl with the high ankle sprain. The same kind of play where he's running out of bounds and somebody falls on the back of his legs. Ryan says the irony of the Wentz situation is classic Vikings, the Jefferson Rager connection, the flip of the Foles situation for a redemption run, good old Minnesota sports. Yeah, what would you do if it didn't have some irony mixed in, right, Ryan? You're absolutely right. So I want to get to the conversation with Jeremiah Sirles because I think he answers some questions that you guys have when it comes to just the offensive line and JJ and his observations as a former player, the play calling, and he's got some really good insight on that. So if I didn't get to some of the questions that you guys have asked, I apologize for that. But I do want to make sure that I bring you this conversation because it's really good, really insightful with a guy who has been there through it all. That is for sure. Jeremiah, the 2016 season, all those things. But I'll answer a couple more and then we'll get there. Mr. Mayor says, really hard to feel optimistic right now about this team. 50% of the roster injured. The rest have been playing poorly, and the young quarterback of the future earned the 33rd quarterback in the league ranking. That's, I think, been the hardest part for everybody, even for myself. And, we talk about this sometimes in the show. You guys will ask me about, being a journalist and managing all this sort of stuff. But it's whiplash. It's shocking. And I got a few messages from people who were like, man, you kind of, yesterday in the emergency podcast, you kind of went like all the way down the road of this just not working out at all. And I thought, how can you not talk about every possible thing that happens now? And to go from inside the Chicago locker room, where that was really special, where Aaron Jones is talking about JJ McCarthy, saying, where would you guys rather be? This is awesome. And let's go make a play. And everybody was just amped for JJ McCarthy, and everybody's buying in, and it's just so much excitement for the entire week. And I know he probably didn't deserve the NFC Player of the Week and all that, but I mean, just such a moment for the kid, right? In his hometown. And then he shows at the end with the arm strength and the athleticism and all the things that he did so well. To a week later, you're talking about, yeah, he's like the worst quarterback in the league. He can't play. He's a bust. He'll never play again. Like, who would have ever guessed? Even I would have guessed it could have gone bad. He had a kid in the middle of the week. That's probably pretty tough to do. It was a short week of preparation. He's inexperienced. Like, all those, I wouldn't have been shocked if you told me that Atlanta won the game and he didn't play well. But now to be in this spot where it's hard to see when you bring him back in, it's hard to see where he gets these reps. It's hard to see even getting to the end of the season and have answers. Then again, we're talking about Vikings football. Can you really predict it? The only thing you can do is just see how it plays out. But it's shocking for everybody. And I think that's, some of the reason why, certain people, fans in the chat are just kind of wanting to throw up their hands. It's just not going to work. And others are saying it's still fine. And it's really somewhere in the middle, right? It's probably somewhere in the middle where it's not fine, but it's also not, hey, it's over. The franchise quarterback idea is dead. And now Carson Wentz is your future. I don't think that we're there either. Jack says JJ McCarthy needs time. Give him till possibly year 3. And if he isn't good, time to find another quarterback. That's probably how this has to go. Is yes, you want to make the playoffs this year. And this would be the year that JJ McCarthy would get to practice behind the scenes. It's possible he gets in for an injury week or something as they have the veteran quarterback continue to play. And then you're trying to make your decision on that information. Or you could just say the minute that it looks like your playoff odds are less than 50%, you just have to go McCarthy all the way. And that might be how I would approach it. The second that your playoff odds are a long shot, you got to go McCarthy the rest of the way. They could also just win the next 2 games and play McCarthy in London and go on from there. You're balancing trying to win and trying to learn about a young quarterback. It is a hard thing to do. But I don't think that we should look back and say they screwed it up. What were they thinking? KOC has no idea how to teach a quarterback. They built a bad roster. We know those things aren't true. We know those things aren't true. We've walked through all these moves. We watched training camp and how talented the roster looked. Nobody would have expected you'd start the season 2 weeks in and be without this much talent, and then be asking a young quarterback to be in there, needing to be a great version of himself to win like he would have had to have been the other night. So it's not easy, my friends. It is not easy, but you guys are used to it. Not your first time ever having been whiplashed by the Minnesota Vikings. So let's get to that Sirles conversation. Jeremiah Sirles, former Vikings offensive lineman, to try to bring some levity and insight to the situation. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here and Jeremiah Sirles joining for another episode of Tuesday Morning Left Guard. And I just want to thank you, Jeremiah, for last week where you said, hey, this is finally fun. We've been through a lot of tough times with the old quarterback position. This is great. That was really a thing to say when you're around the Minnesota Vikings, isn't it? As a guy who watched the 2016 season play out, a guy who was at a practice where Teddy Bridgewater suddenly had his career altered by a knee injury, you were the one that was stepping out on the limb and saying, this is so much fun. This is great. Why don't you just go to a baseball game and say, hey, this game's moving on fast. There won't be any rain in the forecast, right? Jinxerson is now what you will be referred to. What do we do now, Jeremiah? What do we do now?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where as you're watching it, you're like, this can't, like this okay, this is bad, right? This is bad, but it'll be fine. And then all of a sudden you get the news like, and JJ's hurt. And you're like, okay. Like, are we really doing this? Are we really? What it is we used all of our health karma up in 2024. Every ounce of health karma that the Minnesota Vikings have accumulated over years of bad injuries all got used up in 2024. And now it's just like, hey, got to start over. You got to start from the bottom. Your left tackle, not playing. Your center, brain. Oh, your backup left tackle, brain. Oh, your franchise quarterback, ankle. It's just one of those things where it seems like injuries are contagious. Like, and I don't know why, but sometimes it just feels like injuries are contagious, and that somewhat feels like where we're going with this. And I just really hope it's not the case for the entire year.
And I know there's the discussion of, well, they signed older players and stuff, but Blake Cashman's not old. Andrew Van Ginkel was healthy all of last year. Ryan Kelly, a concussion, that's just a really bad break for a guy who was playing awesome football too. I thought he was really playing well in these first 2 games, and now he's had several of them in his career, and you're concerned about where that's going in the future. And it's also anybody who has ever wondered, I don't know how many fans have ever said, why would they pay a left tackle? But if you've ever had that thought, like, it's just another fat guy, I think that we were reminded, actually, I think Vikings fans have been fairly blessed since the Clemmings era Riley Reef was solid, not
Hmm.
perfect, but solid. And then Darisaw follows him up and has been a monster beast for the entire time. And these last couple of weeks show you how hard it is to play quarterback in the National Football League without Christian Darisaw.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing when Trent Williams got hurt in San Francisco and the wheels kind of fell off for Brock Purdy there. If you don't feel comfortable on your blind side, you're constantly your first read's not where's the route. It's a quick glimpse to my left going, did he get beat? Right, am I okay? Now I can get back to the route tree. And with a young quarterback that's already struggling with timing, already was struggling with getting the ball out, and then you're constantly getting pressure from the left tackle position, and then now D coordinators are sensing that, right? There was a little bit of blood in the water after the Chicago game. And then they really came after that left side this week early and often. Stunts, twists, blitz. They tested Donovan Jackson and Justin School a lot early in this game, and it got home. And when things like that get home, you open, I think I text you, like Pandora's box has been opened on the left side of the line now. They will week in and week out now get tested. Can they pick these things up? And until they do, and they put on tape that if you stunt, we'll pick it up, they're going to keep getting tested on that left side, especially with Walter Rouse in there now.
It reminded me of exactly what it looked like with the Rams game last year for the
Yeah.
Vikings and mostly really the end of the season where we saw the Cardinals last year beat that left side by using a lot of stuff like delay blitzes and stunts and twists. And then the Rams just threw it all at that when it was Cam Robinson and Blake Brandel because they knew they couldn't handle it. And it was very clear that they were in over their heads in that game against the Falcons. And Raheem Morris, no dummy. Like
Yeah.
knows what he's doing with defense. They also know how KOC wants to play offensively. That's a guy who has a lot of experience with that McVay offense, having been out there with the Los Angeles Rams, and it was a perfect storm for pressuring JJ McCarthy. But let's talk about the big issue at hand here, which is Carson Wentz taking over for JJ McCarthy after this ankle injury. Now, there is is it a soft benching part of it? And I think everybody had that thought. I think that it's an injury that would take a quarterback out for a couple weeks, but you especially don't want to rush him back in there if Darisaw's not going to be back or just at all. Like he was struggling so much that you wouldn't want him with any sort of injury trying to play versus Carson Wentz, who can probably get this offense back on track. So let's talk about the McCarthy part of it first, and then we'll
Yeah.
get into Wentz. What did you identify with your NFL player brain as you were watching JJ McCarthy struggle against the Falcons?
Yeah, what I witnessed with him is I'm giving the kid grace. He's young. And anyone that wants to fight me and say that he's not a rookie, my address, you can find it, come to the house. The dude's a freaking rookie. I don't care that he was in the NFL for a year or not. Until you take live bullet reps against a team that can hit you, kill you, put you in the dirt, you're still a rookie. And what I saw from him was his processing speed just isn't there yet. Right. And that's okay. It's going to happen. Right. I played with Josh Allen when he was a rookie. His processing speed wasn't there yet either. And we were terrible. We went 6-10. It happens. But he needs to have better answers. And as I watched, I'm going, okay, there's a couple things here that are not making a ton of sense to me. I get Kevin O'Connell wanting to say, I have full faith in JJ McCarthy, and I'm going to let him go out here and I'm going to let him get the reins and go. But it felt almost like you threw him in the deep end of the pool without any floaties on and then held his head underwater a little bit and said, keep throwing it. You're okay. You'll make it to shore eventually. It just felt like he was forcing the issue a lot with JJ McCarthy. And I think JJ felt that pressure. Hey, we're not running the football. Kevin's calling pass plays. I got to hit the plays down the field. I got to keep doing. And for a young player that's still trying to figure out his way in the NFL with all that added stuff to it, I just think that he's really in his own head right now, trying to do a little bit too much. And then also, dude, every ball does not have to be 1,000 miles per hour and put a hole through the back of your receiver. Touch passes are a thing in this league. And I think it just takes time to develop those type of touch things because Josh was the same way. Josh wanted to use that cannon and put the ball wherever he could, faith in the arm. That gets you in trouble in this league a lot more than it helps you.
So a few different thoughts on that. I mean, one is that Wes Phillips said last week about the offense that we can't dial it back because he needs to have all the answers to be able to win. And that's the same answer they gave when we talked about with Josh Dobbs. dialing it back when Dobbs was new to the offense and also like not very good. And I mean, he was like 3-9 or something as a starter.
Astronaut, baby.
Right.
What a time to be alive.
Well,
The Pastronaut.
It was a great run. It was a great run of 2 weeks where we talked about him as the bridge quarterback, but ultimately he was asked to do a little bit too much. And it was the same sort of look. It was the same sort of, I'm not really sure. And then, the throw is a little bit late. And then Justin Jefferson is coughing up blood on the sideline because the throw was a little late and a little inaccurate. And I think that that's okay. If your philosophy as a head coach is the quarterback better be able to do every single thing, but you can't start someone who's never played before then and throw him into the deep end. Then you need a veteran quarterback. Then you need 2 years of development. This is something that you need much longer to, because in training camp, I felt like he was getting a lot of the stuff that they were asking him to do. I thought that I was seeing touch passes. I thought that the timing was pretty good. But as you said, it's just not the same. It's just not the same as when someone can suplex you into the ground legally, as opposed to tapping you and being like, sacked you.
Sack.
Like, it's just not. I could do that. I'd be like, oh, he sacked me. Who cares? But that's not how this works here. And that pressure, 2.5 seconds in practice probably feels okay. 2.5 seconds with 70,000 people watching Sunday Night Football and 2 first-round picks coming after you. It's just a different story. And I think when they bring back JJ McCarthy, it needs to be a different philosophy. But I just don't think that they have that different philosophy in their bag. If they did, they would have used it.
It's what we talk about all the time. Kevin O'Connell can't change his stripes, and that's okay. It's won him a lot of football games. It's made him coach of the year. You can't ask a guy to be like, hey, all the stuff that gave you the success and put you in the position that you are right now, you need to change, right? Like, that's not a fair thing to ask Kevin. But I will say the greats in this league, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, they can adapt with what they have, right? It's not square peg, round hole. Right. It's okay. We have certain pieces that we can't just open the whole toy box here and just let it go. We have to develop the box before we let everything go. And he needs to rely, JJ has to be able to rely on other pieces around him to shoulder the load. Right. And I'm going to use Daniel Jones as an example here. When Daniel Jones had Saquon Barkley, he was able to share, hey, 26, you take the load here. I'm going to do what I need to do. And it got him paid a lot of money and he won a playoff game. All of a sudden, you remove Saquon Barkley and say, Daniel Jones, you're the guy, baby. You're going to chuck it all over the yard. You're going to go. Things kind of filtered and didn't go that well. Now look at Daniel Jones with, hey, I have Jonathan Taylor. I have other things around me. I don't have to be the guy. That's where you need to build a young quarterback, right? When you build and you draft a young quarterback, usually first-round quarterbacks are drafted to save the franchise. Right. Hey, come in. We are a desperate need of anything. You just come in. We'll turn this thing around. We'll go. JJ's walking into a unique situation where he's not here to save the franchise. He's here not to crash the car. And for 7 of the 8 quarters that he's played, he's wrecked the car in spectacular fashion. And so if that's the case and you're the parent of the guy driving the car, take the keys away a little bit and say, hey, here's the bike. Let's ride the bike first, right? Let's ride the go-kart first. And then we'll develop you into the car. I think that that's where this probably was going to head if JJ McCarthy was still the starting quarterback. At least I hope that's where it was going to head, and that's where Kevin O'Connell was going to want to go. I'm not convinced that it was, but that's how I would look at this and go, okay, we did too much, right? We did too much. Back it up, back it up, back it up. But I also don't know if that's in Kevin O'Connell's DNA or not.
I think that there's some smoking guns here to it not being. One is trying to throw the ball on 3rd and short at the goal line with a great play that should be a touchdown. But if you draw up a play that your quarterback is not able to execute, is it a great play? A little bit of a tree fall in the forest type of thing. Like, is it a great play if he can't do it? Now, if O'Connell expects his quarterback to take a snap, okay, I'm not saying he's asking too much there, but, maybe just Jordan Mason. Here's the football. Try 3 times to run in the end zone from 2 yards. And if you fail with that, everyone should be very sad with themselves. But here's the other one is there are 15 quarterbacks who have thrown more screens in the first 2 weeks than JJ McCarthy.
We love screens. We love screens on this show so much.
He is tied with Lamar Jackson and Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff, like these veteran quarterbacks with 6 screens, the guys who have thrown, Trevor Lawrence has thrown 16 of them. Like Bo Nix has thrown 11 of them. He's looked pretty bad these first couple of games. Josh Allen, MVP of the league, has thrown more screens. Baker Mayfield has thrown it. The point just being that, like, is the easy button stuff there? I haven't seen it succeed. And here's where the real issue is with McCarthy. Short passing game from 0 to 9 yards has been atrocious. He has a 33 PFF grade, 3.4 yards per attempt. And that to me is the evidence you need for the timing of a quick game is not there with JJ McCarthy. So you either play someone else or you figure out how to not have to ask him to do that. The quick 3-step, I see it, I throw it. Like we saw Kirk do that pretty well in his career. We did not see Sam Darnold do that all that well. And we're not seeing JJ McCarthy do it all that well. But when you've only thrown 7 passes behind the line of scrimmage in 2 games with this young of a quarterback, I mean, I'm going back to Jake Browning with Cincinnati when he had to take over for Burrow. It's kind of all they did was deep shots to those good receivers, and then the screens and runs. Kind of did that with Jordan Love early in his career with Matt LaFleur. I just don't think that's who O'Connell is. I don't think it's a philosophy, which means it's going to be really hard for McCarthy to run this, which kind of brings us to the next level of the conversation, which is how long are we going to see Carson Wentz? Because Schefter's out here saying 2 to 4 weeks, but is it going to be 2 to 4 weeks or is it going to be longer than that?
I don't think it'll be longer than that, but the thing that worries me the most is young quarterbacks, especially rookies, they usually suck in the first part of the year. Like historically speaking, right? CJ Stroud was kind of the anomaly that just took the league by storm, and now he's regressed in his second and third year, if you ask me. But you kind of see this shift of these young quarterbacks, first 5 games, first 6 games in the league, just an eye-opening moment, right? Hey, those dudes literally are giants that run really fast, and the windows are a lot smaller than I remember. The margin for error, that 40-second clock matters now. Like there's just a lot that goes. So usually those first 5 weeks, you're growing pains. And then you start to see guys, the good ones, start to grow later in October, November, December. This problem is this pushes that growth period back into late October, into early November, when the games start to really matter a whole lot more. You can't win the division in September, but you sure as shit can lose it. Like it can be out of your grasp really quickly. And so now you're saying, okay, 1-1 here with McCarthy. Now he's going to sit the bench for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. Well, now we're just pushing that growth period back to if he comes back, and you're never really 100% healthy when you come back from an injury in season. Like you don't ever feel like you did before the injury. It's just managing the pain. So now you're saying on top of the ankle, his mobility might be a little bit limited and he's still speeding up. You're pushing the growth of this guy back further and further. And that's where you have to decide, if Carson Wentz has success, do we go back to what our master plan is of grow JJ McCarthy, or do the veterans on this roster like Jonathan Allen, Hargrave, Brian O'Neill, like these dudes are feeling, they're looking around going, I don't have 2 years for us to figure this out. We need to win right now. That's where you have to start going, okay, where do we go from here? Do we redshirt him a little bit here? You only played in 2 games. We can still redshirt him. Or is it, hey, this is our guy. All our chips are in this basket. We're putting him back out there.
So this is where the tree of scenarios that you start following down, like the if-then type of situations, because if they win the next 3 games, which is extremely plausible considering the quarterbacks that they're facing, then you end up sitting there at 4-1 coming back from London to face the Philadelphia Eagles at home. And I just don't see how you could say, hey, I hope that ankle's healed up. Here are the Eagles with one of the hardest defenses schematically to face against, a team that's got a great defensive line. Jalen Carter, I mean, if he's facing off with Donovan Jackson, that could be a homicide right there. And Jackson certainly got welcomed to the NFL a little bit more in week 2 than he did in week 1. But that goes for anybody. Like any offensive lineman who faces Jalen Carter is going to walk out of that arena feeling pretty bad about themselves. Is that the environment that you want McCarthy to come back to? But then you play the Chargers in a short week. And is that the environment you want him to come back to with a limited game plan? And then you go to Detroit where Sam Darnold freaked out at Ford Field because of that atmosphere. And that's a division game. And I also think that the locker room is a huge factor here because there are a lot of players who came here with the idea of competing for a Super Bowl. That's what
Yep.
they were sold on, and not to spend their entire season trying to help someone become the best versions of themselves eventually. And that becomes for Kevin O'Connell something he's going to have to really manage the rest of the way, because at the same time, for the betterment of the long-term franchise, you need to find out if JJ McCarthy could play. And I can't tell you that after 2 games.
No, and no one can. No one can tell you if JJ McCarthy is going to be a dude in this league or not, right? We talked about the it factor and he had that piece. And yes, I still think that's in there. But if you have the it factor, but you lack the overall talent to be able to do it on a week in and week out basis, that's a bigger problem. There's plenty of dudes in this league that have that drive and that fight and that everything to it, but the talent just doesn't develop into what you want it to be. I'll put Trevor Lawrence in that category, right? Like there's times Trevor Lawrence has incredible moments, but there's times where you're like, oh, you leave a lot to be desired here. Now he's making $55 million, so they'll pay those dudes. But I agree with you. When is the right time to bring JJ back? Is it when he's fully healthy? Is it when Carson finally stumbles? Because he will, right? I don't think, I mean, that's the big what if is that Carson is what we hope Carson can be, the best version of himself, or is he the one that lost 30-0 against the Denver Broncos in week 18 last year? I don't know. He's been on the couch all summer. He's been on the couch all training camp. He hasn't had the reps that makes me feel like, oh, I feel good about Carson Wentz coming in this game and operating. I think he's going to operate better than JJ McCarthy just based off the ability he's played in this league. At one point, he was looking like a rising star in this league, and then he never really came back from the ACL injury. So there's signs pointed there. But I agree with you, man. And it's not that the locker room's giving up on JJ McCarthy. I don't want that to be the narrative. I don't want we don't want the kid thing. That's not what it'll be. It's just this is a win now league. It always has been. It always will be. And if you're a head coach, you can't put the development of a young quarterback above the other 52 guys on the roster. You just can't do it. You'll get upset. You'll have chasms in the locker room. You'll have fights. You'll have guys not happy. You'll have a bunch of media questions. You have to eventually do what is for the betterment of the 52 guys, not the quarterback position. But at the same time, you have to go, but is this guy our future? Or do we have to start figuring other things out? It's why the head ball coach makes the money he has. It's why those dudes, the buck stops with them. It's not a fun position to find yourself in week 2 of the season.
And the other scenario is that if Carson Wentz does not play well and they lose 2 out of 3 here, then you're talking about all this money spent this whole season that was pumped up to be this thing that they had reached for 3 years. And then it's on the brink. And you're saying, hey, JJ, would you mind just like saving the whole season for us? Like that's a lot to ask you. Well, but it'll be fine. Look, you're only playing the Eagles and they won the Super Bowl last year. I mean, my goodness, like suddenly it's crazy in this league how fast life can sneak up on you and how the twists and turns happen. Because if McCarthy was going into these next 3 games after the way he played against Atlanta, I think we would have been sitting here saying, all right, let's break down what went wrong. Let's talk about how they're going to fix it. But we still think they can fix it. I said after the game, I still think this is a double-digit win team. They just need to figure some things out with JJ McCarthy. But now it feels like everything is on the table. We don't have any idea what's going to happen. And I was going to ask you, FanDuel question of the day here is on FanDuel right now, 9 teams have a better chance or better odds to make the playoffs than the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sure this has been adjusted in part from the recent results and injury. Is that fair? Like, do you think it's fair that 9 other teams have better odds to make the playoffs than the Vikings?
I do, because the NFC there's some really talented teams in the NFC. I mean, you look across the whole thing of it, and then you're going, okay, well, the easy way into the playoffs is win your division. Probably, I mean, watching what Green Bay's done, watching what Detroit did to Chicago, tough road to hoe. Not impossible, right? But tough road to hoe based off the 2 offensive performances that we saw. I mean, I don't even think we ran 100 plays yet this year, Matt. I mean, that's unheard of for an offense in the National Football League to not get 50 to 65 plays a game. Like, that is just kind of industry standard. And so you're looking at that going, okay, they're probably not going to win their division. Are we certain that with this quarterback problem, they're even a top 7, 8 team in the NFC? There's a lot of really talented teams that are not going to win their division. I mean, shoot, the whole NFC West is 2-0 or 1-1, right? So you're saying, okay, maybe there's the teams we're going to come out where the Rams are healthy with that Stafford. I think it's a very fair thing to say right now, just based off of the status of the rest of the league. We get out of our Minnesota bubble and you look across the league and see teams like Seattle taking the next step in their evolution of who they are. Carolina shows some life against Arizona. Tampa goes down and beats Houston. I mean, there's just a lot of teams in the NFC that I think are way ahead of where the Vikings are at this current moment. Again, we'll reassess this in November, but the path on which the rest of the teams are versus the rocky roller coaster that the Vikings are riding right now, I think that's a very fair assessment.
I think that if they can get to 4-1 and even 3-2, it's not over.
No.
If you go 1-2 in these next 3 games, say goodnight to 2025, and I guess we'll start our draft analysis. In October. Just I threw up in my mouth right now talking about that after such an interesting and entertaining offseason where they made so many moves that I thought were the right thing to do. So this next run is very pivotal because if you get to 4-1, then the whole rest of the way you need to go 6-7 and you can make the playoffs. If I'm doing my math right there,
Sounds right.
If you need 10 wins to at least get a shot, and look, if you get a 10-win season and don't make the playoffs, then, well, it's a bad break. But to get to double digits, so these next 3 games become enormous for them in order to actually make this work. So let's talk about some of the other things on the roster going on, because it's just been so much focus on this singular issue, which is now the biggest thing facing the franchise for today, for the rest of the season, for the future. So it really is that big, this injury for McCarthy coming off that performance. And, the other part of it too, Jeremiah, is just how it looked in the last thing we saw and how much that impacts decisions. Because if the last thing we saw before he got hurt was Chicago, we'd be like, oh, well, 2 to 4 weeks, he'll be back. It's fine. Like, you get him back out there. The last thing we saw was him not looking like an NFL starting quarterback, and that makes it a lot harder for reintegration. But the offensive line is problematic. What did you see outside of just like hammering away at Justin School? I always feel bad when that happens. Like he's trying. There's nothing you could do there. He's trying. Imagine how bad guys who aren't playing in the league are at left tackle. But and how good Darisaw is and how much money he's worth. He should ask for a restructured contract. Like
before even stepping on the field.
Come back. What if we just made a fake tree company and gave me like 10 more million? Or maybe that's only the NBA and the Patriots. You can Google that one with Brady. But anyway, so what else offensive line wise was causing them issues?
Yeah, when Kelly went out, the communication was really bad up front. You saw, like, I can remember very specifically an inside zone play to the left where we leave the front side linebacker completely unblocked. That's a communication error, right? That's we pointed the wrong guy, or Donovan didn't get the call, or Juergens just had a straight up mental error because it was his first time playing in the National Football League. And listen, dude, I've been there. It's not an easy thing to all of a sudden be like, hey, you've never played center. It's Sunday Night Football. We're down. We got to go score. Get your butt in there and let's make sure everyone's on the same page. Oh, by the way, there's a rookie next to you, right? So make sure you help him along as well. That for me is the bigger issue than the left tackle, right? Darisaw will be back. Is it this week? Is it next week? Like that position at one point in time will be like, okay, I feel good about that. The bigger issue I see is the center position. Michael Juergens taking the helm there with Carson Wentz. Who makes the calls? Who's in control? What are we doing? Who's on what plate? Right? If I'm guessing, it's going to be, listen, Michael, you walk up there and you call the protection by the letter of the law. Right? You don't get to flip. You don't get to see fun things. You don't get to chase ghosts. If it's 3-by-1 protection and we're going left, you go up there and say, Mike left, we're going here. And then Carson can change you from there. So you're talking about the communication standpoint having to be very much streamlined with the center position. The right side of the line, I feel like, has been a bright spot. I feel like Will Fries and Brian O'Neill's playing at a great level. They gave him that sack the other night. I don't know if I can necessarily give that. It was kind of a tweener on an empty situation there where he kind of squeezed and then didn't come back out late. But I do truly believe that if Ryan Kelly's in there, we turn that protection to that guy. Right. So there's just certain things that look like there, but the communication, the free runners, and the miss IDs are the biggest things that are hurting this run game and this pass protection game. But they're, like you said, all that's fixable, right? Besides the left tackle getting physically beat at times, and Donovan being a rookie and going to take his lumps and going to be, the growth curve is going to be just there, just like it is for JJ McCarthy. I feel okay about where this is going. But if Ryan Kelly is going to miss anywhere from 3 weeks plus, because this is his fourth concussion, right? If he's going to continue to miss multiple weeks here, I worry about the center position for the offensive line.
And the folks who in the offseason were concerned about the backup center, like, this is your day. But at the same time, there's not a lot of good backup centers in the NFL. It's not
No.
like they're just bouncing around. You've developed this guy for a year, and that's the best you can do. In a lot of, I mean, there's also only so much money to give free agents. Like, why don't we get like 4 more guys? It's like they spent every dime to build up this team. You have to have some young players step up. And now it's time for Michael Jurgens. He's a very bright guy, but maybe a week of preparation will help him,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe working a little bit with Kelly behind the scenes, as much as that could be possible, will help him. But there's only so much you can do. And that's why Ryan Kelly has been paid what he's been paid and why he was drafted in the first round. He was phenomenal in these couple of games. So missing him is a massive drop off that now is maybe part of the reason that you want Carson Wentz in there. Even if JJ wasn't injured, like, you can't have somebody who doesn't understand how to flip protections and was relying solely on Ryan Kelly, if now the center doesn't really understand it either at that level. The strip sack that you were referring to, we asked Wes Phillips about it today. His answer was basically that wasn't what was supposed to happen. And maybe you can explain that. And I know that you don't know every single call and protection, like, you're not in that room, but kind of how that's supposed to work and how someone could end up just completely free running.
Yeah, so it's an empty protection, right? So does everyone remember the Anthony Richardson preseason where he got smoked off the edge because he didn't see the hot protection? It's similar to that. So when you run a 5-man protection, you can only block 5. And so in this situation, the center, the left guard, and the left tackle were sliding left. So the 3-man slide was going to the left. What that means is the right guard and the right tackle have to protect inside out. So they have to protect the A gap and the B gap are the number one priorities in their protection. So obviously, Will Fries, he sticks on the 3 technique. Boom, his job's done. As Brian O'Neill sets, he watches that linebacker that's stacked over that 3 technique take 2 steps forward. And as a tackle, as your rule is, if that linebacker looks like he's coming into that B gap with bad intentions, that's where you have to say, okay, I have to jump in here and protect him. Well, what happened was he took 2 steps forward, and then as the back free released, he also released with the back. Well, Brian had already committed to protecting the B gap, and by the time he tried to turn back out, that DN was already by him, right? So it's a tweener thing where you as a quarterback have to know where your hots are, and as a tackle, you either have to kind of commit or be able to put yourself in a position to get back out and at least get a hand on that guy. So it's on both of them, right? It's on the quarterback and it's on Brian O'Neill, but it is just one of those plays. It's a football play, right? Sometimes those guys are paid a lot of money there too. Sometimes those guys make plays, right? And that was a good call against that protection specifically. So yeah, it was just based on the fact, like, if there's a running back in there and it's a 6-man protection, that never happens. But it was an empty protection. Usually offensive coordinators like empty protection because it makes the defense declare what they have to do, which tells the quarterback, okay, this is the zone scheme, this is the man scheme. I have my answers. But you kind of live in the die by the sword too when you only have 5 blockers if they send 6.
Here's my trouble. For that entire night, the Atlanta Falcons are kicking their ass up front. From the start of the game, every moment, every drive, they're winning that battle. That's why they drafted 2 guys in the first round. And if Chicago could beat you up front, sometimes with that current roster situation, then certainly Atlanta, a more talented team, could as well. Their coach is good. They're sending a lot of stuff at you. And you texted right for the beginning when Donovan Jackson didn't quite get around on a stunt, like they're going to attack them that way. It's 1st and 10, and there's an empty protection. And this is where we get into what we were talking about. But also, I want to hear you talk about play calling, because I think it's the easiest thing in the world when a game goes wrong for everybody to be like, play caller must have been his fault. What a fool. If I was calling plays, it would have been much better. And we fall into that trap as media as well sometimes, where it's just fully on the result and not based on was it a good play or not. But I think when you get to something like that, you're like, I don't know if that's the situation you want to have there with the lineman you have and the quarterback you have just standing there what have you said before? Like butt naked with
Yeah.
nobody there to help you, no Aaron Jones.
Naked in front of the zombies.
I mean, that's a lot to ask. That's what Matt Stafford does.
Yeah.
They don't even let Jared Goff do that a whole lot. Like there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league who are not in empty very often unless it's like a panic situation. How did you feel as you were watching about the play calling issue?
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with the play calling is it's not simple, right? If I have a young quarterback, and especially a young quarterback who the first 8 quarters of his career are struggling, I'm going to go to the 7 quarters, excuse me. I'm going to go to the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Right? Keep it simple. Don't have, okay, if I'm an empty, I have to know where my route is and I have to know where my hot is. Right? Just let him think about, hey, protection set. If they send 6, I'm protected. I'll be able to get the ball away. It's just putting a lot on his plate. And we talked about it. That's Kevin O'Connell's thing, right? I got to have all the tools at my disposal to call the game plan that I need. I just don't agree with it with a young quarterback. And he's been maybe still thinking, hey, Kirk Cousins could do it. Sam Darnold could do it. Josh Downs could do it. Like Dobbs could do it. Like these dudes could all do it. Why can't JJ McCarthy do it? Well, JJ's proved to us that he's not there yet. I'm not saying he can't do it. He can't do it right now. So if he can't do it right now, let's not add another thing to his plate of play call, snap cadence, formation, motion. Is it empty? Am I hot? Am I not hot? Like just one more thing on his plate can be a half a second to a second of processing speed, which in the NFL is the difference between ball out and dead. Like 2 to 3 seconds is ball out and dead. And there were so many times in that game where I saw JJ go, should I run it? No, I shouldn't. And then by that point, boom, the sack's there or the play's there. And so I worry a little bit from the play calling standpoint of, are we just asking him to do too much? And that also goes to the fact that I thought Jordan Mason forgot to get off the bus or was late to the game or something where he didn't exist in the first quarter. Like he started your comeback against the Chicago Bears. Why wouldn't you just say, let's start with this dude and pick right back up where we left off? I think that there's just a little bit of Kevin O'Connell looking himself in the mirror and doing the old point the thumb, not the finger, and going, how can I help this offense get back on track?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of those common sense things, like whether you've played in the NFL or you're just watching casually and you see the quarterback looking in over his head, there has to be an element of how do you get that back on track? And we've talked about it a lot. You know, you run play actions, you throw in a couple of tight ends, which I think Josh Oliver's really banged up and was trying to play, and they probably would have used him more. But you get some stuff to get that guy in a rhythm of completing passes. And the commonality with this team since O'Connell got here is it seems really hard to do, to just get the ball in the hands of Justin Jefferson, get the ball in the hands of even an Adam Thielen. Even if you gain 5 yards on a completion, 6 yards on a completion, a screen, whatever it might be, I think the average yards per screen completion is something like 6. And they're not all like that, but although they did drop one that should have been a big play, and that was brutal as well. It's definitely not all KOC. It's definitely not all JJ. It was kind of everybody with this. And I think that's the struggle for O'Connell. And I would totally get it if I was him. If you're looking back at the tape and you're like, guy's wide open in the end zone and we drop the fumble or we drop the snap. What you want me to call a different play? The guy's wide open. I got you a wide open guy. But at the same time, I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle of that. You could get those guys open, but if you can't find them, so I kind of go back to that.
I also think this is one of the first times that I watched Kevin O'Connell be a human and allow his emotion to overrule his coaching at times. And it happens. We're all emotional human beings. I mean, it's a hard thing to win in the National Football League. It's a hard thing to play in the National Football League. It's a hard thing to coach in the National Football League. And after JJ misses that 3rd and 1 pass, the deep shot to Naylor, that again, right play call, the wrong play call, the dude was open.
Yep.
Right. The dude was open. You hit that play call. You're right back in this game. You're moving forward. And I saw the emotion of him getting upset, right? Like physically, like angsty and angry. And then he's like, oh, just punt it. Right. And I'm sure that's one of those things where he's looking back on, I let my emotion overrule my logic at that point. I should have went for it on that 4th down.
They needed to. Yep.
They needed to. I should have went for it. And I do think that what played an element in this game of all the things you just mentioned, the drop snap, like I think emotionally it wore on Kevin O'Connell through this game, and he allowed that emotion to overrule logic. And you can't do that as a head coach. You can't. Now, he hasn't done it in a long time. I don't anticipate him doing it again, but it is just part of the human element of the football game. And so I hope he learns from that. He's played in the National League. He knows what it means. But this was the first time I saw the chink in the armor of Kevin O'Connell allowing his emotion from his frustration of where the offense was to overrule something that should have been a no-brainer coaching decision.
Yep. And I think 70,000 were feeling that at that moment because Naylor catches it. I don't know if he goes all the way, but
he's getting close.
His name is Speedy. I mean, he's
Yeah.
getting 50 plus yards there and you're kind of back in it. But at that point, even if that happens, like it's not like you win, like there's been so much struggles throughout the game. But I can understand from a coaching perspective, when you keep drawing up open plays and your quarterback can't convert it, how frustrating that would end up being. Let's get to love to see it, hate to see it. I'm going to start with love to see it. All of collegiate football on Saturday. It was just one of those days where you paced yourself to the couch and every game just brings you everything you hoped it would give you. Tennessee and Georgia was magical. The Notre Dame game was absolutely insane. And then, the Gophers game was a little bit of a rough watch, but everything throughout that day was just sheer entertainment. And I felt like we're really back now once this happens in college football.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Vanderbilt beating up on South Carolina. That was a fantastic game to watch. You're just looking through it and it's just giving you hope for like, dude, when we get into these conference games, it's going to be fun. Like, I can't wait for Big Ten play starts this week. We got Michigan here at Nebraska. Like, that's going to be an electric game going forward there. I love to see it. And I don't know if you watch the post game Sunday night football coverage, but when they're introducing Parker Romo to Leonard Floyd and they're like, hey, do you know who this guy is? He's like, oh yeah, that's Saquon Barkley. They're like, oh, do you know who this guy is? He's like, I don't have any idea who this guy is. He's like, oh yeah, this dude just hit 5 field goals in the game. He's like, oh, Leonard Floyd, nice to meet you. Like, it just goes to show you that sometimes these kickers, they don't know anyone on the team. They're the bastard children that no one really wants until you want to hoist them on your shoulder. But most of the time you want to put them in the closet. Like, I just thought that was so funny from Parker Romo there, going back to Matt Prater with Josh Allen, where like he said he was showing him pictures of his kid playing and he's like, I'm going to give you everything I have. It's like, who's this old man they let in from the street? Right? Like, I just find it so funny that like the kickers are starting to become more and more like, oh yeah, you guys really aren't actually part of this team until they really need you, are you?
I was actually going to include Parker Romo as I'd love to see it because that guy's a great kicker. Like we saw it last year. He was great in training camp and he was called. I mean, they don't win 14 games without Parker Romo. He hit a game-winning kick, was at Arizona, and he hit 5 field goals against Jacksonville in a very memorable football game that was. And when he lined up to kick one from, I think it was 50, that was kind of a dagger, I was like, he's probably going to make this. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. So good for him. I like to see some guy who has just kept with it, finding a way. Now, speaking of kickers, I was going to throw a love to see it and hate to see it. Do you get to the point where kickers are so good and they're kicking from so long where you're like, stop it? Like, this is too much. Like Brandon Aubrey kicking a 64-yarder and looking good from 70. I'm like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do anything to get a field goal now. You just like they should just like do a fullback dive 3 times to kick a field goal. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit silly. They need to, what's in those K balls at this point? This is nuts. Someone used to kick a 50-yard field goal and you'd be like, whoa, that guy. Now it's like 50 yards. It's just chip shot.
I mean, I remember watching that Dallas game going, as soon as it hit the star, I was like, oh, this game's over. Like, it literally is like, they crossed the 50. This game, well, that's not going to be so great anymore. But, I mean, they're weapons. If you're not like 85% from 50 anymore, you can't kick in the NFL. And now I think I was talking about week 1, they like changed the rules where you can break in these kicking balls now during the week. It used to be you could only get the kicking balls like 3 hours before the game. And so they're just going to continue to make, eventually, I think they're going to have to make the goalpost smaller. Like, I don't know. These dudes are getting so much better. The kicking specialist camps from getting younger and younger and getting more and more talented. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if in 3 to 5 years, the goalposts kind of shrink into like the Arena Football League, right? Where it's just like straight up and down. It's like a 10-yard window you got to hit in there. So yeah, I mean, Brandon Aubrey, what a weapon. He's going to be great. but also just puts so much pressure. I mean, Younghoe Koo has a rough first week, and they're like, oh, we're bringing a guy on practice squad to see if he's going to push you. You're going to see a lot more kicker revolutions in the NFL as we move forward here, too.
What's your hate to see it?
My hate to see it is Mike McDaniel's demise in real time. I mean, from the way he's talking about impressors, the way the team is freaking out on the sidelines. I mean, you start the game. I mean, over the last 2 weeks with turnovers, like to open your first series of the game is turnovers, and then you never really get yourself back on track. I am concerned about the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel making it to October, if I'm being honest.
I think that's he's actually taken over maybe for Kevin Stefanski for most likely coach to get fired. At least we all knew that Cleveland was going to be terrible when they were starting Joe Flacco, but I think there were much higher expectations for Miami to be a competent team. Along the same lines, the New York Jets are who we thought they were, and them just getting run out of the building after there was a little bit. Yeah, this is always so hard. This is like this little bit of, oh, like maybe they found something with Justin. No, and he got hurt again because he hangs onto the ball forever, and sadly he will remain Justin Fields. I also think, I hate to see it wise, watching the Monday night doubleheader. I don't know how you feel about that. As a man with kids, maybe you just wanted to get to bed. But the Texans, I mean, just after such a great start with CJ Stroud, have just kind of bumbled around. And Danielle Hunter, oh my God, the Euro step that he put on, like the sack, he's great. Their defense is great. They got lots of tools, and they just can't really figure it out. And I don't know what's wrong. I don't know if it's Stroud. I don't know if it's the line. I don't know if it's the coordinator again, but I was really excited about where CJ Stroud was going to go. And now I kind of hate to see that it's just not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I remember after his rookie year, I was like, dude, this dude's gonna be an MVP in the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, he saw the field, he dealt it, he got the ball out, he saw the vision. I think a lot of it is the offensive line play. You trade away Laramie Tunsil, you trade away Kenyon Green, right? Your center ends up going somewhere else. You've now got rookie at left tackle and Ariante, who's I think going to be a really good player, but still a rookie, right? It's hard to watch that offense, and it's like, yeah, Joe Mixon will be back eventually, but Chubb's not a slap. Like, he's older now, but they just have no rhythm offensively. And that defense is so good. I mean, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter might be one of the best tandem rush duos in the NFL when they're both playing lights out like that. 100 sacks for Danielle Hunter, golf clap for him. Congratulations. You're terrorizing tackles everywhere. I feel bad for the Texans. I thought they were going to turn the corner and maybe win the South this year. And again, right? I mean, the South's been kind of a nightmare, but I think my last hate to see I'm going to stay in the South. I'm not sure Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen like each other. I mean, there's that interaction of literally Trevor giving him the wave off when Liam's like, hit him in the chest, right? And then they're asking him on the post game, how's your relationship? And he's like, it's fine. He's a competitive guy. That, I think, is going to cause some serious issues down in Jacksonville between Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence.
I was thinking about how, well, here's maybe a sarcastic love or I don't know which one, Ben Johnson, but the same sort of deal of, can some of these offensive freak boys like also know how to work with human beings, or do they spend all their time in a locked room with one light and they're just drawing on napkins? Like, this is my bootleg concept that no one will ever figure out. Ben Johnson out throw to the tackle. Then no one will ever see Penei Sewell with an end around coming. And you're like, but if you ever talk to another person, that's a question. The Bears just getting run completely out of Detroit. Just a reminder, the Detroit Lions were not going to have one bad game and be like, we give up, we quit. But I don't know what the Bears are supposed to do. And the same thing with Jacksonville. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do. When you draft a quarterback who's just good enough to give you hope and is actually not great, I don't know who's supposed to coach him. Like, what you're supposed to do there. Because with Trevor Lawrence, guys, there's not another level to this. He is who he is. He's pretty good at times and he's pretty bad at times and shrugs. And I think the same thing is going to go for Caleb Williams. And that, to me, is you just cycle in new coaches time after time.
Yeah, because unfortunately, the way it works is that the coach is more expendable than the first number 1 overall pick. And then when you double down and you pay him a large scale contract, he's not going anywhere. Right, you can try and figure it out, and the coach is a little bit handicapped and handcuffed to that player. it's going to be really interesting. Did you see Ben Johnson after the game, like defending Dan Campbell to the death? They're like, were you upset that they went for it on that fourth down? He's like, it's who they were. That's who they always have been. It's like, oh, buddy, you're not there anymore. It's okay to be like, yeah, no, he should have done that. But I think he still has a lot of respect for Dan Campbell in that realm there. But yeah, I feel bad for Ben Johnson because Caleb Williams he's not it. He's not it. And I know you can call him a bust or not, but what he's shown in the sample size that he has given, he does not show that he has what it takes to be a quarterback in the National Football League.
And Jared Goff,
5 tutties,
still out there doing it. Okay, well, we'll see what happens going forward. We're gonna maybe hope for some more love to see it as we go forward. But you know what? We'll be here no matter what. That has been proven from us throughout history, and we'll just have to see how it goes. I don't think anybody knows where this bus is taking us from now on, Jeremiah. We just know that we're going to be on it, and we have no control. So see you next week.
I won't be here next week. I'm going elk hunting.
That's right.
I'm going elk hunting, but I will be back the following week because it always happens. Whenever I leave to go elk hunting, something wild happens. It always says. So I'm probably going to come back from the woods and be like, dude, Carson Wentz, MVP. Like MVP talk. You're like, he threw for 500 yards. It's like, oh, okay, sounds good. Or it's be like, dude, Jordan Mason, 250 on the ground. Like, oh, sweet. Can't wait to watch this happen.
Okay. 2 weeks from now, then, we will be back in action. Thanks for your time, as always. And football. There you go. Jeremiah Sirles with great insight into the offensive line play, into the play calling, into the locker room mentality when you have this quarterback situation. So I'll answer a few more questions if you got them. Also, Maggie Robinson, we recorded a segment earlier, and we'll just call it a little bit lighter hearted than the hardcore what is going on that has been the last couple of days. So let's see. Start with Joe here. Says, why don't you ask KOC those questions in the press conference? So the other day after the game, it's very hard to process exactly what happened in the game as far as the play calling, the wide receivers, who's open, until you kind of get a look at the tape. I thought we got a lot of explanations from Kevin O'Connell of what he thought happened after the game, how JJ McCarthy played, the blocking issues, some of his thinking when it came to that. And then for the Monday press conference, a lot of times that is, he's looked at the tape, we've looked at the tape, then we can go back through some of the details. But in this press conference, he came out and announced that the starting quarterback was out. So any detail that we were going to get from those parts of the game, or at least a lot of it, kind of got thrown out with all of the injury stuff, and then what was next for McCarthy, what was next with Wentz, and so forth. And if you watch the Wes Phillips press conference, and just while I was playing that interview, I was gathering all the things he said. There's a lot of detail about the quick game, what they thought of JJ McCarthy, the play that we talked about in detail there with Jeremiah Sirles, where they went empty in the protection and how that's supposed to work. There's a lot of stuff there. I know that people always want us to yell at the coaches and things like that, but we do ask these questions in a professional type of manner. We get as much as we can for answers, but sometimes we don't get answers. Like when Mark Craig asked Wes Phillips today about why Jordan Mason wasn't getting the ball more in some of the short yardage situations. And, Wes didn't have an explanation there, or didn't really want to give one. So, we do the best that we can when it comes to that stuff, but, nobody would get very far running up to O'Connell and saying, tell me about the protection. Why did you do it? How dare you? Like, a lot of times we ask these questions, we get explanations, I bring them back to you, and that's what we do here. But when everyone's upset, usually what happens is, there's fingers pointed at, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that to us? Why didn't you ask this question or that question? There's fingers pointed at the play calling, the offensive line coach, the GM for every single move. Like, this is what happens. I didn't expect to be in the fans lashing out phase already in week 2. And just like earlier, you guys are talking about this tweet about Ed Ingram's PFF grade and Garrett Bradbury's PFF grade, as if we've never seen those guys play before. They had good games at times before in their careers, I actually thought Ezra Cleveland was maybe a better player than the Vikings gave him credit for, but had some pretty significant weaknesses that would get taken advantage of. I think we all know that when the quarterback is in the top five at holding on to the football, and when it's a rookie or never played before center setting the protections, and it's a left tackle that can't really play in this league, that Donovan Jackson is not going to be the best version of himself, or probably Will Fries. And Atlanta had a really good game. The first game, the interior line and everybody except for School played really well. JJ McCarthy had 4 total pressures. So they're not grading very good in one game versus another game where they graded very well. I don't go back and say, you know what they actually should have done is kept Garrett Bradbury at center and Ed Ingram at guard instead of signing Will Fries, a much better player, or drafting Donovan Jackson in the first round. That just seems to me like, let's look at every single thing to say everything sucks. Everyone should be fired. Every move was wrong. Like, we don't have to do that in this situation. Like, it's still a team with a bunch of talent who is in position to play 3 games here where they can win and kind of get ahead of the sticks with this schedule, get guys back, get Addison back, get Darisaw back, get Cashman back, get Van Ginkel back, have much closer to a full roster, and try to compete to win games in the NFC North. This is a long season, my friends. You don't necessarily need to start saying everything is a lost cause by week 2, just because the quarterback situation got thrown into disarray and some other things have gone badly. I don't think that we need to start doing that. There's a lot of things that they've done that were really good decisions that have been right and that built a very strong team. And coming out of last week, just think about where we were last week with the discussion of the interior D-line was great last week. And the interior O-line played extremely well together. Ryan Kelly was great. Fries was good. Donovan Jackson was great. Jordan Mason played really well. But Aaron Jones caught the ball. Like, a lot went right against Chicago. And a lot of the things that they had planned out went right. And then week 2, a lot of those things didn't go right. That doesn't mean every one of those, like, you just don't even remember what happened in week 1 with a lot of this stuff. I did promise to talk about Dallas Turner. I will say from watching the tape that I was not impressed by his game overall. I thought that his lack of ability to set the edge, how easy he was moved at times, the strength and the power was not there the way that it should have been on some run plays. He made some good tackles, but he was also moved too many times. And then they didn't have a lot of chances to rush the passer. He got a couple of opportunities. He made good on it in getting a sack, but they just didn't throw a whole heck of a lot of passes. But if Turner is going to eventually develop into an every down type of player, then that part of the game just has to be better. I will say also that nobody did a great job against the run. Bijan Robinson was fantastic. Their O-line played with connectivity. And when Brian Flores talked about it, he said a lot of guys kind of got away from their technical elements. It wasn't just him. I mean, and you look at some of those grades, Hargrave and Allen, like the worst fears kind of came to fruition. And I think that that is what strikes a lot of you so deep in. And I'm not saying that there's no panic in the Purple Insider podcast, because there's plenty of problems. Okay. There's plenty of issues that could be long-term problems. But in this Atlanta game, it seemed to be every single thing that you went into this season going, this could be a question mark. That game hit on all of them, whether it was McCarthy's inexperience, the offensive line without Darisaw, and just, Ryan Kelly potential injuries and what it might look like if he's not in there. The play calling and not leaning a little bit more on Mason, not simplifying things as much for JJ McCarthy. That was a bit of a concern. Is it going to be too much for him to be able to carry? That hit. And then on the defensive side, when you trade away Harrison Phillips because other guys win the job behind him, are they going to be able to step up to the plate? Did you sacrifice too much in terms of the run defense for the pass protection, and the worst two graded run defenders on the Vikings are Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. And both of them, of course, very good in rushing the passer overall, but in that game, they got pushed around, which has been their recent history. And Dallas Turner was the third worst. And Turner, I think, is another guy that needs to be on the field for more of these types of plays. He rushed the passer okay, but I mean, you think about it, he had 14 pass rush snaps because Michael Penix didn't have to throw the ball hardly at all and got rid of it. So he had a couple of good ones, but that run defense has to be a lot better if he's going to be on the field a lot. Ivan Pace was another guy whose weaknesses have been taken advantage of by the opposition. I thought Theo Jackson actually had a great game, saving their butts a bunch of times when I looked at it on tape and in the PFF grades, but not too many people were very good in terms of against the run in that game. And that was a massive worry of restructuring that defensive line. And you have to wonder how that's going to look going forward. So there were a lot of things. The only thing that was not taken much advantage of, I think, was just the secondary was fine in that game. Didn't get lit up. Wasn't a great game for Michael Penix overall passing the football. And they did get more pressures than you would have thought. They got 15 total. And I'm curious what percentage of that. Yeah, they created pressure. I mean, 41% of dropbacks, and Penix under pressure went 2 for 7 with 17 yards. When he was under pressure, got sacked twice. So the pressure was great. And this is the sacrifice that you make when you go and get Hargrave and Allen, is that you are pretty much saying we're going to allow other teams to run a little bit better against us, and we're going to pressure the quarterback a lot better on the interior. And overall, it worked. But that could get frustrating at times because that means other teams are going to be able to stay on the field, and you have to counter that with long drives on offense. You have to counter that by forcing the other team to play from behind. I think if another team has to play from behind against the Vikings with this rush, it's going to be miserable. But if they're playing from ahead, that's what they're going to be able to do. So the game script is going to matter quite a bit when it comes to how they play going forward. But it was a worst fears realized type of game. And anything that you guys asked about in the offseason, everything that you asked about, could this be a concern? Could that? Except for maybe Will Reichard and Ryan Wright, who had a great game. Except for that, everything, even Miles Price dropped a punt. It seemed like it checked every one of those boxes. So, it's just, that was one of those games where a lot of things went the wrong way, and they lost 22-6. I mean, it wasn't losing by 50 as it was with Chicago. That doesn't make anybody feel any better, but it was one of those games where just everything seemed to go wrong. And, we're definitely checking off are you just looking at things and saying, do them differently with let Wes Phillips call play? They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. The guy calling the plays won 14 games with Sam Darnold last year. I know it's easy to forget that with the way that things looked for one bad game, and football wouldn't be football if you didn't go crazy after every single loss. But I think we do have to find the right too hot, too cold. Taking play calling away from KOC, way too hot. That's too far. Rein it in. It's not a fun week for the Vikings or their fans, but we don't have to go nuts with the analysis and just point our fingers at every single player and every single, let's find the right areas to focus on here, I think. So by the way, FanDuel question of the day, if you just joined or if you haven't answered that yet, the Vikings are now plus 184 to make the playoffs. 9 teams have better odds on FanDuel. Do you think that's an overreaction by them, or if that is just right? Talk about too hot, too cold. Jay asks, how many carries will Mason get on Sunday and yards? I'll be interested. The props aren't up yet on FanDuel, but I'll be interested to see what that is. I saw the fantasy community going crazy today about Jordan Mason being RB1. And, I think that, when it comes to Mason and his number of carries, it should be in the 20s. And he should be pushing 100 yards. And he should be scoring a touchdown. If you're going to win, that's where it needs to be. Z31 average point gap on the 14 wins. They had a lot of great wins, man. don't try to pretend last season didn't happen because you're mad right now. The regular season of last year, Kevin O'Connell did a tremendous job. Sam Darnold played great. The offense was really good. They won a lot of games in impressive fashion. They crushed the Falcons. They were way up on the Packers in both of those games. Like, we all watched it, right? We all watched what happened last year. We have 3 years on the sample size of this coach and this offense. And we've seen at least 2 experienced quarterbacks have a lot of success with this. I just think that that's like it's the most simplistic type of way to look at football, is when your team doesn't win, you just say everyone sucks. And I think we can pick it apart better. I think we can do better. We could point to some specific plays where we say, this was where I think KOC would want this one back, and maybe he asked too much on that one, but also we can't ignore that a guy is wide open many times in this game and they just get missed, and that they're playing with a left tackle who is replacement level at best, when they usually have a left tackle who's one of the best players in the league. And they had that left tackle for half of the year, and then they got another guy who's a starter last year and worked through it. So I think that's my goal always, is to try to get it right of what are the things that we should be looking at, and what are the things that, hey, we're just reacting because you're unhappy with where they're at right now. So that's always a goal of mine, is to try to get that stuff right. And Dino points out Allen and Hargrave didn't have Cashman behind them. And that is a good point, Dino, because, well, Eric Wilson is a great player, and I have huge respect for Eric Wilson. He's not Blake Cashman. Like, there's a reason why he's more of a backup type of player, more of a special teams guy in case of emergency, and then a rotation type of player. And when you look at the run defense grade, he is right behind Hargrave, Allen, Turner in run defense, and he's great in coverage, and he's a highly intelligent player. He's calling the defense again, like just huge respect for Eric Wilson in his career as an undrafted guy, but he's not Blake Cashman. Like, that's why they paid Blake Cashman all that money. So that was absolutely a factor. There's no question, Jay, that Chicago made mistakes to help them win that game on Monday night. I didn't say they played a perfect game Monday night. I said it's really funny how you can go from 1 week of analysis pointing out, hey, the interior D-line rushing the passer was a huge success, and that looked great. And the interior O-line that was rebuilt got great performances from Jackson and Kelly and Fries. And then Kelly goes out, and Atlanta's throwing things that the quarterback can't identify, and the quarterback's holding on to the ball too much. And shockingly, the offensive linemen don't grade as well. Like, we can look for better explanations than just, I guess they should have kept Ingram or something. Like, what? I don't even know what the conclusion is supposed to be there, other than just looking for people to fire. So now you want to fire the O-line coach, I guess. I mean, it's just, I don't know, just fire everybody. They're 1-1, fire everyone. That's where we get to, right? After a loss. Newt, the issues are the Rams and Lions game from last year. Well, right. I mean, the recent sample size of Vikings fans watching Vikings football has been 3 meltdowns out of 4. And how many quarters of good football over the last 4 games? 4, there's 16 quarters. I'm going to say 15 bad quarters out of the last 16. And that has negated certainly what they did last year. And I'm not crowning them for what they did last year. But when you start evaluating the people who are running the team and the rosters they've built and the coaches and the success that they've had, we have to look at that bigger sample size, where if you've won 70% of your games when your starting quarterback is in, as Kevin O'Connell so far, and you've had good offenses with a lot of flaws, then I'm more apt to lean toward, I think you know what you're doing, but you just had a really bad game against the Falcons, which started with the quarterback not being able to play at any sort of NFL level because he was in over his head in that game against a really good team and a good defense, a team that could very well win their division. Scott, this is all predictable. The free agents they signed in March were unsigned for reasons. Scott, I mean, I've noticed that every comment is kind of like this team is awful, and just they're going to lose every game and stuff from you tonight, which again is understandable to be really angry. But the free agents that they signed in March, they signed for a lot of money. They signed Will Fries for $17 million. They signed Hargrave for 15. They signed Allen for 20. They signed Jones for $10 million. They were I get what you're saying, but there was a lot of competition for these guys, and they have careers behind them that are worthy of getting big contracts to come here and play. There's been some of that has been very successful in terms of rushing the passer, which is what Hargrave and Allen were brought to do. They've done that over the first couple of weeks, and they've looked like star players when they're rushing the passer. But they're going to have to find an answer for when those guys are not rushing the passer. It's going to have to be Levi Drake Rodriguez, who was just okay. It's going to have to be Jalen Redmond, who I thought had some really good moments. It's going to have to be a rotation. Guys behind them are going to have to set edges, and they're going to have to make tackles and rally a little bit more. But just philosophically, if the other team has that little success passing, you create that much pressure, and they have 12 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, my gosh. My gosh. Zed, they had a good point differential from last year. If you win every game by 6 points, that's actually good. That's pretty good. That's a good point differential. It's not the best of all time. It's pretty good though. Your average winning every game by 6 points. What's 6 times 17? That's pretty good. It's pretty good to outscore your opponents by a bunch of points. I mean, if you want to, that's what I mean. Like, that's why I'm going to play the Maggie interview, say goodnight, because we've probably reached the point where it's just throwing stuff out there to throw stuff out there. Last year meant nothing, apparently. Like, I don't know. I mean, this is what happens. This is a tough place we're going to have to work our way through, I guess. On to the next game against the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I'm going to bring a little bit of light to the show by bringing in the conversation with Maggie Robinson, where we discuss some things around the NFL, including Tom Brady, multiple Monday Night Football games, and some power rankings that she has to bring you guys. And it's a fun conversation. So lighten up a little bit, and we'll be on to tomorrow. We'll get when I bring I don't know. What was I going to say? When I throw a bucket of water on KOC and demand answers or whatever I'm being asked to do here. We'll see what Kevin O'Connell has to say tomorrow. We're going to talk with Carson Wentz as well. And the franchise will keep existing throughout this next week and going forward. So we'll just see where it all goes. But take a deep breath, everybody. Enjoy this fun conversation with Maggie Robinson, special contributor to Purple Insider. Answer that FanDuel question of the day, the plus 184 to make the playoffs, 9 teams higher on FanDuel. Is that an overreaction? And try to enjoy the rest of your night. So take care, everybody. All right, welcome back into the show. Maggie Robinson, the Robinson Rundown here for this week, where we go through 4 or 5 different storylines around the NFL. And Maggie Robinson, formerly an NFL producer and now at Syracuse, and I understand has been appearing on ACC Network, which is very cool. You are tasked with something very important for the show tonight, Maggie, which is you got to lighten the mood. It is not a good scene over here. So take us away from all the Vikings injuries and things that we're breaking down to the rest of the NFL. So some joy and light can be let back into Purple Insider. What's going on, Maggie?
Dark Monday for the team. Dark Tuesday, I guess. Let's kick it off. Let's look back at Monday. There was a doubleheader. ABC, ESPN. Do we like that? One game started at 10 p.m. my time, which let me tell you, that's past my bedtime. That's tough.
Yeah, for me, so I'm more of a night owl. And if you give me 2 football games in a day, I'm just going to be like, football games. And I think for the purposes of America, it is a little bit tough. If you're on the West Coast, you probably think this is great. Maybe you're getting home from work and a football game is starting right away, and you can eat dinner in front of the TV with America's game. If you're in Central Time or God's time, it was fine. I mean, I think it ended around 11 o'clock or something last night, which is totally great with me. But on the East Coast, that's pretty tough for everybody. I guess maybe it was closer to midnight, but that's kind of my timeline anyway. I think for most people, that is pretty difficult. I like having two games on Monday night. It just feels like a continuation of Sunday, feels kind of epic, feels a little extra important. But I could see where a lot of people would be like, okay, Geno Smith, please just don't throw a game tying touchdown here. So I can watch this. But I like it to kick off the early part of the season as a little bit of a change up.
Yeah, I think it's funny. People always complain about, oh my gosh, there's not enough football. Like, we need to put more in the off season, whatever. I miss it so much. And then week 2, we have a doubleheader, and people are like, oh, I'm exhausted. Please, good God, stop. So, like, you can't win. But I will say, this is the last year of these Monday night doubleheaders, because did you know, with this new ESPN NFL merger acquisition that happened, this new deal that is set to be ratified, for lack of a better word, in 2026, all those doubleheader games will actually get put on the NFL network. So there will no longer be 2 games to bounce between on Monday nights. So if you hate more football, lucky you. This is the last year of it. You can stop complaining and tune on to NFL Network later in the season for those next year.
Yeah, I think people don't like football that's hard to watch for them. I mean, later on in the evening, just in general, or like it is getting tougher with your Amazon Prime and then your Netflix game and everything else. And I think everybody understands the NFL is a biz and every league is going this way. Didn't love Adam Silver's answer to this question about more streaming services, where he was like, there's highlights. It's not really acceptable. In this case, where it's a one-off, every once in a while, there's a double header. And if it's a game with your team in it, maybe you're a little frustrated how late it's starting. But otherwise, okay, you watch the first half of the game, whatever. I mean, unless you are super dialed in to Chargers and Vegas Raiders, not that big of a deal to just have extended football on a little bit longer. But I could see how it might be a little much. I think when they went to 17 games, people got more exhausted by the NFL. Every single weekend, whether you're me covering games and going different places or just sitting on the couch, by the time you get to the end of Sunday, you're like, that was a lot. And then you're like, okay, ramp back up, rally for Monday night for 2 more games. I get it.
I definitely felt that, and I was being paid to watch football. So for those of you who are paying to consume football, my thoughts and prayers are with you. Okay, let's go to topic number 2. This one's also a little controversial. Tom Brady in the coaching booth. Albert Breer, you guys probably saw the photo, tweeted a photo of Brady sitting next to the Raiders offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators with a headset on in front of the tablet. What do we make of this?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of media folk who have, like yourself, gone to college for certain things, including ethics that you take when you're going to journalism school. And it seems a little bit on the unethical side for somebody to be in a coaching booth, working directly with the coaching staff, talking with Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator of the Raiders, a couple of times a week, and then going on a Sunday and broadcasting games for other teams. And they lightened up the rules with him meeting with coaches beforehand. So he's going into meetings with coaches, gathering information as a broadcaster, and then going and helping them call games. And you can see where the obvious conflict of interest is. And even if he's not doing games that his team is directly in, I mean, it still might impact the way that he views the game, or it might be some sort of unfair advantage of gathering information. But I also think that it's just hard to make anyone care about this because the Raiders are the Raiders, and they certainly showed that against the Chargers. It's not a competitive team. No matter unless you put Tom Brady in a time machine, went back 15 years, and then put him instead of Geno Smith at quarterback, I think most people are going to be like, the Raiders, like, who cares? And I also think too that it is an information age in the National Football League as well as the rest of society. What is Tom Brady going to find out from having a 15-minute meeting with Todd Bowles or whoever that he is going to be like, okay, Pete Carroll, I found out that they don't love their left guard. Like, come on, we got data for every single inch. We can tell you how fast a slot receiver ran down the middle of the field in the third quarter. And you're thinking Tom Brady is Sherlock freaking Holmes and he's going to go grab so much info. Like, if this was 1992 and that guy was getting special insight, probably, but I don't see him being that helpful. And I also don't think he's a coach either. I think he's real smart at football, but that doesn't mean he knows how to really coach it. It's probably a big nothing burger, but I think that people like to be angry at Brady because everyone wishes they either were Brady or had Brady. And so anything to be mad at him about is like acceptable in our society.
I agree with everything you just said. And to that point, it's Tom Brady. If he wanted to find out sensitive information, you don't think this man has a million ways to find that out? That's not, mind you, it's a virtual production meeting he's allowed to go to. He doesn't even get to go in the rooms or in the team facilities. This man is sitting on Zoom talking to a coach. If he finds out anything that's sensitive, that's on the personnel on that team. It's their fault for giving it up. It's not that hard. It's not like this is like, oh, it's so secretive. No, it's a lot of people on this phone call. A lot of people in that room. If anything, Tom Brady is more removed because he's on Zoom. So he's not getting those conversations outside the room where it's happening or the walk down the hall. Like, this feels super overblown for me. And this is not just me being like, I came from the NFL and I think they're doing the right thing. No, like, again, people love to make drama out of nothing. And people love optics. The way things look and that photo, yeah, it didn't look great. It didn't look great. He had the headset on. He's in front of the tablet. He's sitting there suited up. Okay, but the man's not a referee. It's not like he's throwing a game.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, calm down, guys. Like, chill out. Twitter fingers, calm down.
Yeah, and if Tom Brady is sitting up there, well, he is involved with that team, and if he's sitting up there and he's like, oh, I see a coverage thing, and that ends up helping them, well, that is part of him working for that team. So I guess I would qualify it as like, it's weird. I don't want to say it's absolutely nothing. It's weird. There's
Right.
no one else who has done this before. What I question is how much this is actually helping them. Are they, and part of me thought, do the coaches even want them up there? Like, they're trying to coach the
Right.
game for their game plan and everything.
Uh-huh.
And I would also talk to Brady if he was around, if I was a coach. I'd be like, oh, hey, any ideas for this or that? But I don't really want him helping too much during the actual game. So it was an odd thing. It might actually be uncomfortable for them a little bit because he sort of bought his way into their coaching booth. And you're like, well, it is the GOAT, but am I supposed to listen to him if I'm the coach and I'm trying to help call whatever play? So I'm not sure how helpful it is. I was actually ready to also praise Tom Brady for his very big improvement as a broadcaster. And when he first started, I would not have sent Syracuse students to go watch him call a game. I think he's gotten much better. He's pretty insightful now, and he's tried to be a little bit more analytical. I don't want to say critical because nobody really is these days in those broadcasts, but I think he's fine. None of this really bothers me. If the Raiders were, 10-0, maybe I'd be like, what's going on there? But they remain the Raiders. It's probably a nothing thing.
I found it very interesting that I listened to a podcast. Tom Brady has actually been preparing less for his games and doing better, which I think is something that now I'm understanding as someone learning on-air broadcasting. You can, in fact, over-prepare for a game, for an event, and then have so much information that you almost feel like you don't know what to say because there's so much that you want to get out. And now he feels a little bit more relaxed. He knows the game. It's Tom freaking Brady. It's not like he needs to do all this homework. Like, the man could play with his eyes closed still. So I do think he's done better. It is interesting he's playing less. And did you hear about his quote unquote big announcement?
I did
He's
not.
He's unretiring. Am I dropping this news to you?
Oh, yeah. For flag football, right.
For flag football in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, I can't wait.
March, tune in, but it's not an NFL event, unsanctioned.
Brady is annoying. I mean, he is, there's no doubt about it. I have more respect for him than almost any player in NFL history. Like, he's the GOAT. He deserves that. He's won all those games, but he is like in your face a lot for a guy who retired. And if you already were kind of annoyed by Brady, you're like, and this, and then the media's all worked up about this other story. Like, stop it, Tom Brady. And I saw that too. He's unretiring. Oh, really? Like, who wrote that? Who wrote that press release?
My gosh. All right, let's go to some actual football, shall we?
Yes, please.
Enough brain talk. Yahoo Sports put out their NFL power rankings, as most sports blogs do. And I want to give you 3 different topics from this list that stood out to me. Number 1, and fittingly, number big up on Green Bay going all the way. After 2 weeks, they're like, yep, they're going to the Super Bowl. It's done and dusted. Their defense is phenomenal. This is happening. Is this overblown or is this legitimate?
Based on the way they've played, they have played better football than anyone in the NFL for 2 weeks. The Buffalo Bills offense has certainly been there. Their defense wasn't as much against the Baltimore Ravens, but the offense and defense for the Packers has just been an A plus plus plus. And the defense for them is so good right now. I mean, actually, probably the offense is an A and the defense is an A plus plus plus. I mean, when you face the Detroit Lions and Washington Commanders your first 2 weeks and destroy them like that's very impressive. Now it's a long season and Micah Parsons has to play the whole year and there's some sort of fusing of whatever in his back. And, you could be a little concerned potentially about that, but it's a well-coached team, offense and defense. Their defensive scheme has gotten now more dynamic because Micah Parsons is there. And another thing that's really funky about the cornerback position that's so hard to evaluate is that it's so reliant on a lot of other things. It's like the way the defense plays, the scheme, the pressure, all that stuff can suddenly make a weakness look fine or even good for corners. And the other thing is too, oftentimes by the time we decide someone's an elite corner, he's on the other side. And that I think was Jair Alexander. Like for a little bit, Jair's just the dude, but just like running backs, they come and go. So him moving on might have been better for them to get somebody younger in there. I think they are every bit as good as they're cracked up to be right now. But as we've seen from the Vikings season, things can change very, very quickly. And it's usually pretty hard to pick out the Super Bowl winner after 2 weeks. But Green Bay deserves their flowers. Every power ranking should have them right at the top.
Off to a very hot start. I looked at a few other rankings. They were ranked number 3 in the ESPN poll behind the Eagles and Bills. I don't know how I feel about that. Like the Eagles were like, meh, like good, but like the Packers have been like stand out, like lights out these past 2 games. Bills, okay, fine. Eagles is the one that I was like, okay, no, the Packers could be number 2 in this list, but they've been top 3 in all the lists I've seen, which feels fair.
Yeah, I mean, with the Eagles, I think that they had about as tough of, well, I mean, I don't know, is Dallas like the toughest matchup? But they had a pretty tough matchup against Dallas. They find a way to win that game. A little help from Dallas dropsies. They did not blow out the Kansas City Chiefs at the same time. They were in control of that game. It's really hard to win 2 Super Bowls in a row, but I think that the Eagles deserve just the credit of what they've done in the last 3 years, really going to a Super Bowl. Even when they had a bad season, they made the playoffs and then they go to the Super Bowl last year. And then I think with the Bills, the Ravens belong right in this conversation. Now, those 2 teams to me are so far out ahead of everybody else, along with maybe the Chargers, who had an impressive win. Those 3 teams in the AFC have just sort of said, hey, everybody, like smell our dust at this moment, including Kansas City, who's now, I think, way behind in the power rankings, that you've got a very clear, maybe top 5 or 6, and then somebody else is going to have to make their case.
Yeah, I agree. AFC is looking absolutely stacked. Let's jump to the team that the Green Bay Packers destroyed, the Commanders. Very middle of the pack here, ranked number 13 in this power ranking list. Let's chat because last season, obviously 12-5, Daniels looked like their savior. Current day, Jaden Daniels looking like he's got a knee injury, really not doing well with Terry McLaurin. I think that holdout period really was missed practice time. And the completion rates have been way down compared to this time last year between the 2 of them. And that's just down to reps. Like that is a solvable issue that the front office is probably kicking themselves about of, man, if we had more time, this could have looked a lot better. We could have been more buttoned up. Also, TBD if Daniels plays on Sunday. Like the wheels feel like they're falling off here a little bit. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think that Green Bay's defense made 2 franchises all of a sudden feel very uneasy about themselves. Detroit came back with 52 points against the Chicago Bears, and we were all reminded, oh yeah, Detroit is actually good. Green Bay is probably just that good on defense now that Micah Parsons is there. And I think the same thing for Washington. The first week, Daniels looked fine. They beat the Giants. They took care of business, got to 1-0, and then they continued to fight in that game and had opportunities. So it wasn't like they completely lost by 30 points against Green Bay. So I wouldn't overreact to the early part of the season here for Washington, but I also think that you've got a great point that if you have a number one wide receiver who's going to elevate your quarterback that's in his second year, why are you pinching pennies? You brought in this new ownership group. Magic Johnson is somehow part of this team. You gotta pay up for wide receivers because they're very hard to replace, as the Vikings have found with even Jordan Addison being on the shelf. They're very, very hard to replace. Those guys had great chemistry last year, but there is such a thing as a sophomore slump as well. The league figures out your tendencies. They've got a year worth of tape and data. You got a target on your back. And I also felt like Washington maybe just didn't push enough chips to the middle of the table defensively because they were nowhere close with the Packers. The Packers got easy open wide receivers throughout that entire game. They got out schemed. They got outmanned. And they kind of look like a team that's going to be good enough to hang around and maybe be in the playoffs, but not the team that should take a huge step forward with a young quarterback of that talent.
The expectations were super high. And also, what if Daniels doesn't play? Is it Marcus Mariota?
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, journeyman. I remember him from when I was in high school in Tennessee. Like, fun fact, I played soccer with his wife. She's a baller.
Wow.
Crazy fun fact. Is he really leading this team if Jaden Daniels is out with a knee injury? I don't think so.
I do think that he's probably a top 3 backup quarterback in the league.
Sure.
Because he has stepped in and won as a backup before. So can he win? Yeah, he could win a game or two if they need him for longer than that. I think what I'd be concerned about more than Mariota having to play a little bit is that going to limit Daniels for the rest of the year? Is it going to be nagging? Because it is not easy to heal on the fly, especially if they lose this week and then everybody's saying, we're panicking, we got to get Daniels back. And then he pushed it. We saw that from Jordan Love last year. He pushed it a week or two early, and it was a problem throughout the entire season for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risky one. I think we'll just have to see how it plays out. Let's look to the very bottom of the league. Not very bottom. One up from the bottom at number 31, the Dolphins. That's a sinking ship as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what's happening down in Miami. I don't think Mike McDaniels is there for long.
No, I agree. I think he is very much on the hot seat at this point. And this is what happens when you miss your shot. When you build up that great team and you're stacked and you've got your chance and your quarterback has his best career year. That's now 2 years ago for Miami. And oftentimes, if you don't have Josh Allen and you don't have Lamar Jackson, you end up having to rebuild, and they didn't accept that this offseason. And I think that was their big mistake, is that they really seemed to just sort of bumble around in the middle and were like, well, maybe we'll just sort of get by. We've seen that with the Vikings in seasons past, and with a coach that a lot of players seem to like and has a good scheme, I think, but also maybe one of those coaches that can lose control pretty quickly. And that might not be able to steer the ship through different adversity. And it looks like he's struggling quite a bit with that. I don't think anybody feels too sad about the Miami Dolphins having problems, like an irrelevant franchise at this point. Yeah. But I think that, when you see like the NFL players and they're voting him very high as a coach, I think he's got some good ideas and good leadership tactics there. But the roster, it peaked. And when it goes down the other side of the mountain, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it feels like they were just kind of skating by and they're like, well, we've done it before, so we can do it again. It doesn't matter that everyone's older and more tired and there's no fresh energy here, but like it's been done. So I promise, like, look, it doesn't work like that, guys. I wish it did. If it did, a lot of other franchises would be holding on to players really tightly. But like you were saying with the Packers, like sometimes you got to cut the guys that are on the bubble and it actually makes you better. It lightens up your team and it brings in new energy. They didn't do that. Tyreek Hill doesn't look like he wants to be there at all. Mike McDaniels is giving the worst press conferences of his life. My favorite quote, which you've all seen, to win games, you have to win the game.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and you can see when a guy's panicking at that point. You can see when he knows it's going that bad. And with Tyreek Hill, that was a ticking time bomb the minute they traded for him. And the second that they felt like he was no longer the Tyreek Hill of his prime, they should have moved on as fast as possible. But I don't even know if anybody else in the league wants that. I mean, it's reached sort of almost Antonio Brown level, like
Agreed.
drama, problems, and I mean, maybe if you're a desperate team that thinks this year is your year to win, you would trade for him for a couple months. But otherwise, I don't know how many people want Tyreek Hill in their building.
Yeah, it's some baggage. We've talked about it before on the podcast, but if you can get a player who's got more upside and more potential and maybe isn't quite there yet, but is chomping at the bit to learn and get better, yeah, I'm going to take him over the attitude and the stress and all the stuff that comes with Tyreek Hill and all of that I don't even want to get into here. So I think they have the Bills next. They could get lit up. Absolutely lit up.
Yes, and they probably will. And I would have had probably Kevin Stefanski getting fired over Mike McDaniel, but that could happen pretty soon if they get beat the way we think they're all going to get beat.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up with my rookie of the week. Drum roll, please. It's a hometown hero, Cam Ward. If you didn't know, I'm from Tennessee. Okay. Did they lose the game? Yes, 33-19 to the Rams. Did Cam Ward have a breakout game and prove why he is the number one pick in this year's draft? Also, yes. Went 19 of 33 for 175 yards. Had his first NFL touchdown. If you haven't seen this video, I want you to stop what you're doing and go look on Twitter. He scrambles out of the pocket, finds some space, and then off center, while he's kind of falling, chucks the ball across his shoulder to Alec Eomanor in the end zone. Beautiful ball. Looked very Patrick Mahomes-esque. Very athletic. I was impressed.
Wouldn't advise doing it all the time. But this year for Cam Ward is going to be, can you survive? Can you learn how to play in the league? Can you make some fun plays and give their fans in Tennessee a reason to care and want to come to those games in that garbage stadium that they have down there that needs to be torn down to the screws and rebuilt at some point?
They're doing it right now. They're literally building it
okay.
right now.
Okay. I was not aware. I hadn't kept my eye on Tennessee Titans.
My parents' tax dollars are going there. They're well aware.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. But I'm going to be keeping an eye on Cam Ward. I mean, he was talked about a lot less than a 5th round draft pick who's QB3 in Cleveland. Strange, interesting. But I think Cam's got a lot of potential. But what can happen with those young quarterbacks is as they go along in the season, when they are playing on a bad team and losing is that they can kind of break them. And I think he's got a confidence to him that's going to be tough to break. And he's got arm talent to make plays left and right. So just keep fighting. Like you're playing against the Rams. That defense is sick. We saw that last year in the playoffs. To even have a reasonably competitive game against them is a good sign for Cam Ward.
Absolutely. And again, it's the Titans we're talking about. Like the fact that he kept them in this game and made them, it was a 2-score game on both sides. Like, hey, he's doing more than Will Levis did last year. We're not getting our Will Levis memes, like our weekly meal of Will Levis eating it on the turf. So I'm a happy camper as far as Tennessee is concerned.
That is for sure. Let me get one take from you since you spent the summer following along with the Minnesota Vikings offseason story. And, we've put you on around the NFL duty here, but it's not going too great over here, Maggie. It really isn't. There's a lot of, injuries. JJ McCarthy down with an ankle and Aaron Jones is on IR and our pets' heads are falling off. I don't know if you've ever seen Dumb and Dumber, but that's the quote from there. I just thought about what year that movie came out and thought maybe I need to update my references. What is your feeling on what has happened with the Vikings?
Okay. What has happened with the Vikings? Here's one thing. Let me come off the jump. We need to give JJ McCarthy a little bit of grace. This man just had a kid 3 or 4 days ago. To anyone who's a new parent or had a kid, obviously I have not, but he's probably insanely tired, emotionally wiped and drained. Did you come back from work 4 days after and play and do something extremely? No. Okay. So one, let's just keep that in the back of our head. Okay. That's shelved. Did he play good football though? No. Okay. Like both can be true. He can be exhausted, have a lot going on in his personal life, and also play poorly, and we can call him out on that. Do I worry that we might have overhyped the team a little bit in the offseason, that this felt like the golden year? Because it on paper, it looked phenomenal. Through the offseason, I was gassing them up like everybody else was. Injuries are unpredictable. I think the next 3 to 4 weeks are going to be really telling. I think for me, when I look at the Vikings team, it's a look ahead what happened in the past happened in the past. Okay, wipe your hands of it. How do we make sure that we don't keep sliding down this slope? Like, what needs to change? Do you have
Right.
any thoughts there?
No, that's exactly right. And the injury part of it, there's not much you could do about that. And how they survive this part until they can get
Mhm.
players back will really determine what's going to happen in the season. Because if they lose 2 of the next 3 games, I don't see any way to recover with where they're at schedule wise, unless there's a bunch of biblical things that happen to the other teams that they're going to face. But if they face Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert and Jared Goff, and those guys are all starting and those teams are good, if they are not in a good place to withstand that part of the schedule, they're in a lot of trouble. But I think, that's why they play the games. But what you said, like, I don't think we were wrong in looking at this roster on paper and saying it should be good. I think what we couldn't have predicted is just how many injuries would happen right away. And you just never know how a quarterback's going to look until he plays.
Yep.
Clearly not the greatest for JJ McCarthy for the start. So now we will see what happens in the Wentz era. Maggie Robinson, tremendous pick me up for this overall. Even though I asked you about the Vikings at the end, a little fun to talk about some other stuff. So every week on Tuesday, we'll get together and look around the NFL and have a good time. So thank you for your time, as always, fit me in the now very busy Maggie Robinson schedule. And we will talk to you very soon.
Alrighty. Football. See y'all later.